So I called him and it just rang. So maybe he's trying to come on. And let me share this. All right, here we go.
I was at the courthouse today too.
Yeah,
You
I
can go over
wanted to talk
there.
about that because you know what I think? Because apparently the his attorneys did a they was like, you know what, let's just let it keep it for October 3rd. I think they wanted to keep it for October 3rd so that when a judge sentenced him, is either going to be time served or he probably got like another 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I didn't see because I saw the initial letter that was filed. It was on Pacer in the trend on the filing. It was 448, and I was in the courtroom today. We were talking. I was talking with what is it, Miss Sylvia um, from YouTube. She was there, so we were talking about it, and then we went to 449, and they wanted to move up the date to September 22nd. And I'm saying, what does it matter? It's literally like 10 days. Why is that such a big deal? And so they wound up just leaving it on and just resetting the PSI report contentions if there's a problem with it on either side. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is him wanting to get out early, which is should I would push that, right? Because why do an extra day in MDC then when you don't have to? It's not a nice place to do time, right? So try to get out early. I don't see why they didn't push that out. And his guideline range is low. I mean, 21 to 27 months. He's a category one. Um, and he is 14 to 16 on the guideline range. So he doesn't have a long time. He's going to have a year in, and he's going to be eligible for RDAP because he's a drug addict. That was brought out in the testimony. So he could literally get out as soon as he would be sentenced, I would imagine, just because of the time credits he's going to have. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on October 3rd. I'm looking at some of the 3553 um, aspects of the sentencing, right? Like uh, putting in respect for the law or specific deterrence versus general deterrence, specifically deterring Diddy from continuing the course of conduct versus a message sent to the rest of society. I don't see that here with this case because he's only convicted of two Mann Act counts, which shouldn't even be on the books as far as I'm concerned. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting.
This is just a sidebar. I took my dog to get washed. I believe it was 4th of July. Yeah, but he stinks already, and so I'm wondering. He does. I wash him myself because I go to Hollywood Feed, and they have it set up where you can wash him yourself, the tub and everything. But I'm going to drop him off at Petco so that they could like shave his hair, cut his hair because he was shedding a lot. So I'm like, okay, is it that I just need to wash you more frequently, or is it his diet that's making him stink? He smells like a little bit like shit, like a butt. He smells like a butt, like his booty. I don't know.
Yeah, you might want to change his diet. My I have a friend who just literally makes all his own food for his dog. He doesn't buy anything store bought. He feeds him like chicken and meat and rice and all these different things that he makes himself for the dog. And the dog's like thriving, is in great health. So you might want to check that out.
I don't got time to be cooking for me and the damn dog because apparently the dogs can't really eat what we eat. So I don't have time for all that. And I think I'm getting him good quality stuff at Petco. And but yeah, he just I don't know. Or sometimes I do throw him table food. I get him the pup cup when we go to Starbucks, but I'll also get the mandolin cookies, and so I be giving him regular people food sometimes. But yeah, he just stinks, and I don't know. I don't know. He just
Yeah,
probably
take him
needs
to
to
the
be
vet.
washed.
Maybe there's something medical that you need to address with the vet.
I guess. And I just called the judge. He ain't picking up, and I text him. I said, "Here's the link. We're starting now." And I didn't hear nothing. And my thing is, honey, um, don't be wasting my damn time. Like I don't like that.
So I mean, since he's not going to come on, and maybe he'll come on later. What was the judge's take on what happened with Epstein?
I don't know. He's basically was siding. Oh, there we go, siding with what Trump and them was saying. Let him explain it. Can you hear us?
It says he's a speaker now, but he's not
I
showing
sent
it. So
him.
he's still showing us requesting.
Really? Yeah. I sent you a co-host link. I sent you the co-host link, Judge. It's yeah. It's his reception, his Wi-Fi. So just give it a minute because it is still it's still showing requests too. But he is he's. It sounds like it looks like he is speaker. So I don't know.
There's another big crypto case actually that I'm following, and I'm
Oh
excited
yeah,
to
is it in the
report
city
on it.
press following that too?
Yeah, Roman Storm. I think he has the same attorney as Diddy as well. Um, so I'm going to be interested in that because it involves with something that's called Tornado Cash, Samurai Wallet, which is a wallet that allows you to use a crypto mixer. So you're basically obscuring um, the transactions, so it can't trace back where it came from, and it's got a huge implications because it has to do with privacy and being able to be private in your financial transactions. So I'm
Mm.
definitely going to be watching for that and see what happens with it.
All right. So all right. Oh, it looks like he's speaker now. He texted me. He says he's been trying to join.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah, I
can
can
hear
hear
you,
you
Judge.
now.
How are you?
Okay, I couldn't hear anybody uh, at all. I, I, I just give up. But I was trying to accept your offer to co-host. I don't know what the devil happened with this.
All right, I'm gonna send it to you right now. See if what happens. See if it comes up. I just sent it to you.
Okay, it did. All right,
Okay. How are you?
I'll manage. Yes. What are we talking about?
Well, I put Trump and the DOJ shut down Epstein files. What are they hiding from Americans? And of course, open mic. And then Diddy, the lawyers, they just it was less than 5 minutes. They agreed. Let's just keep it at October 3rd. And my thoughts on that. Maybe they feel like when the sentencing time come, it'll probably be time served, or he won't get that much time. I don't know. So yeah. So and then whatever people want to request to come up is open mic, whatever.
Let me say something about that real quickly. I've done it. It's just a procedural administrative thing. When you are petitioning a court for relief on sentencing for something like this, there's a possibility that he won't get sentenced to jail under the guidelines. All right. So you need letters, as many as you can, from the heaviest weight people or the most sincere people or the people that are respected, so you can present those to the court. It takes time to get these people to write these letters. Sometimes they're real long letters. It takes time to put together a crew to come in and say, okay, I know what it looks like, but this guy really wasn't that bad. There were actually some extenuating circumstances or other things he was up to, and really, he's never going to do it again. You have to be able to make a presentation. You need to give the people a chance to check things out so the sentencing report can be adequate and prepared. The judge has the option of allowing the motion for new trial to go first or the sentencing to go first. It is easiest on the defense if the sentencing comes first before the motion for new trial because you can see where you're standing and what your options are. All right. What's going on right now is apparently they haven't done that. And my concern, just from it, is this bond thing. From my reading of the guidelines and exposure to them, unless the judge is way off on the deep end about trying to deviate up from them, there is no reason in hell for $1 million bond to not stand for what is necessary to ensure that the defendant return for the completion of the proceedings. $50 million that he tried to put up on the front end was certainly adequate, considering, as I've been predicting, I said the only thing they're going to get him on is Mann Act stuff, and that's all they got him on, if they get him. And that's what they got him on, Mann Act. So this is just atrocious because it's in one of these Article 3 courts, federal district court, the local federal courts, the lowest level, the trial courts, and that's what you're looking at. So moving on from that, there are administrative reasons that I'm not aware of because I wasn't really interested. And unless you were there trying to actually work this and make it happen, you wouldn't know. All right. So,
Yeah, Judge, what I didn't understand was when I was sitting there listening to the bond hearing, the judge basically relied upon Diddy's defense team's explanation of him owning the domestic violence as a reasoning why he needed to still be held without bond, which made no sense whatsoever. You could literally walk outside of SDNY, walk 20 feet, and be accosted by a lunatic who just got out for knocking somebody out or shoving a diaper in an old person's face in the subway system and is ready to violently assault you or potentially kill you right in front of the courthouse because of the DA Alvin Bragg and the lunatics that are running the asylum in New York City. So
I agree with you.
it's insane.
100%.
It doesn't make sense.
And the
Who's
Supreme
more of a?
Court has
Go ahead.
over and over said bond is only to ensure that the defendant will appear until the matters are resolved. That's all, not punishment, because you are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And what's going on is all that other crap has absolutely nothing to do with proving any wrongdoing under the circumstances. And the question is he likely to show back up until these matters are resolved and he gets his sentence, and will he show up? And I've been in many a trial where people have gotten stuff where they've gotten quite a few years, but they've been allowed to stay out on bond until it becomes time to surrender to the marshals. And this
And
is
show
just
up
a
is, I mean,
travesty.
Judge, think about this. You just beat SDNY, the premier federal district court in the union, okay? You beat them straight up. You went to bat, you went toe to toe, and you won on all intents and purposes. You won. This was a home run for Diddy. Not only am I showing up if I get bond, I'm draping myself in the American flag.
Yeah.
And having a suit made of the Constitution. You want to talk about dunking? I'm dunking at levels that would be it would be absurd. So like he's gonna do everything to follow everything he's supposed to do and come back and get his sentence and walk and sail off into the sunset. I don't understand the logic behind this, and all it is
It's
to
a
me is grandstanding.
travesty, a goddamn travesty. And excuse me, it may be something in the midst of the Second Circuit that is supposed to be the best in America, in America's largest city. But excuse my language, they ain't shit. I am not impressed with what I have seen come out of that district. It is pathetic, inept. It is totally against the spirit of the Bill of Rights. It is a travesty. It exemplifies this new trend in what they call lawfare, which is to use the criminal process of the country for specifically political purposes, which is forbidden to the U.S. government to use itself for. And it's horrendous. And the people that have been running that, I'm really, really not impressed.
I agree. It's almost like bizarro world. Like we entered into a new world starting in 2019 into 2020 or 2020 really. And now this is what we're left with. It's just like nonsense. and the amount of idiots, just more and more every single day. And I don't know if it was the vaccine that rotted everybody's brain or the psyop in and of itself that just made people give up and check out of society, but nobody is standing up for any of this stuff. It's literally us in a space on Twitter or X that's talking about these things. Everybody else is like, well, that's just the way it is. What could I do about it? I never seen such just
Inept
apathy.
weaklings who
All right, so
surrendered to be sheep with their nose stuck up the next sheep's behind in front of them.
should we get into the Trump DOJ FBI Epstein shutdown? And guys, if you want to request to come up, please do so. It is open mic. And I kind of want to knock this out in 2 hours, no more than 3. So people are upset that that they're saying that the Epstein file doesn't exist. They did find, child pornography or whatever, and that's never going to be released. But there was like he did not commit suicide, and there was no list.
Okay, if I can offer a little observation, and then I'll back out of it and I'll just listen. There is this thing going on. There's a collaboration between Egypt, Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia. Nigeria is getting in on the picture. It's got to do with petroleum, it's got to do with collaborative international intelligence. Some people ran their mouth off. And now that they've had a chance to actually go through it, they're doing kind of a, oh, hell, what did we get into? We can't let this get out. This is horrible. This would ruin a whole lot of things in terms of national security. It will offend some of our allies very badly. And it looks like, I can't say this with assurance, but I have the sneaking suspicion that Epstein was working with the Israeli intelligence community. And through the Israeli intelligence community, the United States government was getting vital security information because Epstein was exploiting people's sex drives and getting them in compromised situations where they became receptive to suggestions that they ought to do this and ought not do that. So it was helpful. But Epstein looked like he was getting his freak on a little bit too much, and it became something that got intolerable because it could not be allowed. Now, did he kill himself? Well, we have a report in there that there is no evidence that he was murdered. Of course not, because if he did get murdered, they were professionals and they're not going to leave any traces that would stand up in a court of law or anywhere else where you scrutinized what somebody's calling evidence. So technically, when somebody says, there is no proof that he did anything other than kill himself, that may be accurate even if he got killed. You get what I'm saying? This is the
Yeah.
way things work. I will give you an example. I gave this to Dana earlier today. There was a great barbecue chain in Memphis. It was called Gridley's Barbecue. Gridley's Barbecue was a 5-star restaurant chain, but they served barbecue. They were open till 2 o'clock every night. But they closed the cash register at 7:30 or 8. They would not take credit cards. They'd take cash and even out of town checks with no ID. Well, the money got funny. I knew somebody that was with Mater D in the system. I got told that I was doing him a favor representing somebody he was interested in. And anyway, he told me, he said, the money's funny. The big guys have been by here. About 2, 3 weeks later, the owner had a mysterious one-car wreck at 3:30 something a.m. in the morning on a freeway at a certain exit on the way to Mississippi. No witnesses. That was Wednesday night. Thursday night, his general manager had an accident at the same place at the same 3:30 a.m. No witnesses. Friday, his chief accountant had an accident at the exact same place, same time, no witnesses. Now, do you think that was a tragic coincidence or that was a carefully plotted out first degree murder situation? Obviously, the latter. but there's no way of proving it because the people that pulled it off had the connections and everything went as it was, and nobody wanted to get into it because of the ramifications. I have had a few situations as a defense lawyer where they had a client of mine dead to rights, but they couldn't do anything with it because when they got into it, it developed that an open and speedy trial, public trial, was going to let some evidence come out that nobody wanted to come out because it had some national security impact things, or it exposed some people to some very dangerous situations, or it involved a deep ongoing investigation and they did not want it to get out. So they had to back off of it. Think of the Federal Witness Protection Program. These are people that have committed crimes, but they're being hidden and not prosecuted because what they know or what they were involved in becomes more important to the system, to the people that are involved, to the country and the general population than putting them in jail. So you shield them from being prosecuted and jailed so they can give you evidence to go to get somebody that's more dangerous. That's what's here and what I think is likely to have gone on. Once they got into it, they discovered that, oh crap, we do not need to let this get out. And we need to back off just a little bit because we've got this Middle Eastern problem and it's going to cause some very bad situations that we're going to have to deal with if we let it get out when it comes to some of our close allies. I have a sneaking suspicion that that's what's going on. Now, peripherally, I think it's going to develop that when the investigation continues, there will be some people that will be implicated that might get brought to the table and have to answer. But right now, I don't think they want this to happen. And I think when they got into it, they had one of those moments where you look up and say, oh, hell, what did we just open up? And I think that may have something to do with what you got told in the public interest, not just to protect some important people, but because of some things that were coming out, it looks bad right now, and they don't know how to clean it up. So they're trying to figure out a way to clean it up so they can deliver on what they were talking about. And I'll pass that and just stay back for a while.
Judge, I agree with you 1,000%. I don't even think he's dead. I think WITSEC, like you said, as well as DOJ, just gave him a brand new identity, sent him back to Israel. He's probably chilling super regular over there. And all the data, all the tapes of every single world leader, every single executive, all the way up to Bill Gates level, now has to guess on what is on those tapes, and they're able to become assets for the government. And now you can see the institution of what they've been planning for probably years on end, right? Because this investigation and all this started under Trump's first administration and under Jeff Sessions. So I think that we're going to see some fireworks, and you're going to see the ship righted, so to speak, for what has gone on for many years, where the United States becomes the powerhouse. And you also look at the geopolitical ramifications when you talk about China and you talk about what we're doing as far as becoming the manufacturing base. There's a lot of chess pieces on the board right now, and I think we're set up to close down the board and have checkmate in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 years. Now, you're also seeing people that are in politics, that have been in politics for a long time. They're saying, well, I'm not going to seek re-election, and everything is being, neatly put into place. So I think we're going to see it, full circle in the next 2 or 3 years, and 2028, 2029, when they institute a great reset for what they want to do, I think that's when the whole plan will actually come to fruition for everybody to see what they were doing now.
Also, They it was not so much a press conference, but it was in that Roosevelt room, and a reporter asked him again about the Epstein, and basically Trump was just like, "Let it go." We're past that. We're over that. And they said, Bondi, if you want to answer that, you can. And she did. And she said, listen, I never said that I had the list. I said I will review what's on my desk. And, what was there was child pornography, but he did not commit suicide. And she saw the videotape, and there's no list, and yada, yada, yada. But he's like, just let it go. Let's move on. He got his bill passed, honey. He don't care. So, and then I'm hearing that why didn't the Biden administration release the list? Because they had it in their possession first. So this rabbit hole goes deep, and I guess I am going to kind of side with you. What you were saying, Judge, because the rabbit hole goes deep to where there's some people more powerful, you could say, or entities or institutions more powerful than the president of the United States. So sometimes you just gotta let lion dogs lie.
And don't forget the foreign entities who may get upset that we don't want upset right now when all of these delicate situations are developing in the Middle East.
Right. And Netanyahu is it's so ironic. He comes and visits US the same time, with this Epstein bombshell. So listen, that it wasn't no coincidence. That was very much intentional. Um, very much.
And nominating him for the Peace Prize.
Yeah, like
I mean,
what was that about? Yeah,
it's hilarious what's going on right now.
yeah. So I don't know. It's like I said, if anybody want to request to come up to chime in on it, or it is open mic, we could talk about whatever else is going on. I know I've been putting up content about the Essence Festival, of course, Diddy. I think people are starting to get Diddy fatigue, but and then I think after today, I don't think nothing else is going to come out until October when he's being sentenced. So I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what's up next? I know, isn't it? Well, no, because the Idaho murder trial, he copped a plea, so that's going to be fast track. So what is happening this summer? Diddy held it down as far as media all the way to 4th of July. So what's going to hold us down in media from now until October? What's going on? Um the mic
I
was
mean, from what I'm reading as well is potential for terror attacks coming up. Right, that's the next thing because when people get restless and there's too much upheaval, they need to straighten everybody out. Right, and what's the best way to straighten everybody out? Well, you scare the shit out of them. And if you notice, what they just recently did was remove the requirement in certain airports. They're going to phase it in to have to remove your shoes. So I think that they're going to slowly roll back a lot of the things that they've been doing, and then they're going to use that to say we shouldn't have rolled them back too fast, and there might be a terror attack against commercial airliners, something Al Qaeda based, or one of the other whatever terror groups that we have an invisible hand in. I think you might see that coming up, and that's going to scare people. It's enough to get back into line and say we need more security, and then we lose more of our civil rights. I think that's where potentially we're heading.
May I add something on that?
Yeah, then I'm gonna go to Shaw Nation, Alex Jones, and Michael. Go ahead.
Just very briefly, considering what the far left has been doing about creating civil unrest, that's getting the public used to disorder and indiscriminate violence. All right. That sets the stage for, you could call it a terrorist attack, but I don't think it's going to have anything to do with airports because nobody needs to hijack an airplane right now. They got to walk across the southern border with military grade explosives in large, heavy backpacks. Nobody checked them. they got transported courtesy of the government or various states and so on and so forth to where they wanted to go. The explosives are already installed. The detonation devices can be activated quickly, so nobody has to go play suicide bomber anymore. Nobody has to perish with the airplane that they're flying into a tower or the Pentagon. And we have screwed ourselves because we've got a whole lot more incentive for somebody to seek revenge and vengeance against the United States right here. We've let in anywhere from 30 to some high estimates put it up to 60 million people in over the last 4 years, and they are already here. They don't have to parachute in, helicopter in, take rubber boats off of a submarine. They're already here and they're in place. And they might even be staying in a 4-star hotel courtesy of the residuum from the Biden Harris administration. So we screwed ourselves. And when you've got Maxine wastewater types running around, Cory Bookers and such look idiots, and Hakeem Jamals and AOCs and Jasmine Crockett's talking stupid nonsense, trying to rile the public up to go out and burn something in the streets. That is great cover for somebody to do what they're trying to do behind the scenes without anybody realizing what's going on. So I'll pass the mic on that.
So I'm gonna go to Shamation, then Michael.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I was listening to Judge Joe Brown. What's up? Now, you were speaking about the sensitivity of foreign entities. I want to speak New York City political action that's going on here with Mandami, who they said is from Uganda, and he looks Middle Eastern, and he classified himself, I had to laugh, for African American. And now he's talking about City Hall being the center of the Muslim faith. And now they passed a policy for them to pray aloud on the streets with the hijab and all the other gear they're wearing. And this is something like that's never happened. And when you said we left ourselves wide open, hell yeah, we let ourselves wide open. And so how is this person going to have the opportunity to become mayor of New York City, of all the places of the world? And his influence and his followers. So this is going to take a strategic plan of actions. Some people said, well, because we always say, you know, politicians are selected, not elected. Even though New York City is mainly a Jewish town, so to speak, and kind of was always Jewish controlled. So this is a complicated situation. And so now it's like other people are like, well, we don't know what to do. And then you have the Board of Election Commissions who makes decisions, but then you have Bloomberg who's putting $10 million in the race. So I want to know your idea of what do you think is possibly going to take place? And I guess there has to be a plan of action for some of the us who are out there who live in these districts to take some type of plan of action. And I'm gonna land there. Thank you.
Well, those are profound remarks. They're great observations. I would interject this to give some basis for why that comes about. When we talk about this, that, and the other politician being a real live idiot, that may be the case. but they get elected by a constituency, and maybe their constituency is composed of a community of idiots who would elect somebody like that. But because a community of idiots elects an idiot to represent them, the rest of us have to put up with it. There's no way around it. Look at that clown, AOC. Honestly, good gracious. But she has a lot of support in her district. So they love her. The rest of us look at her like she's some kind of travesty, but there it is. Jasmine Crockett is an idiot, but her constituency loves her. Fannie Willis in Atlanta is an idiot, but she gets handily elected because they're idiots in Atlanta that like her. They've got a saying about American politics that is, the constituency gets the representation it deserves. The problem is the rest of the country, the rest of the state, the rest of the city or the county may not deserve it, but they have to put up with what that particular little segment of itself deserves. And if they select idiots, then everybody else has to deal with the consequences of there being idiots in place to do idiotic things. So, yeah, unfortunately, we do have what we have. And one of the problems is the antecedents of New York include Tammany Hall and some of the most crooked, filthy, corrupt politics in world history occurred in New York City over the last 200 years. And that tradition continues. The same thing with other places. So we have to put up with it.
Shimmy Sean, the best thing you could do, and to echo what Judge is saying, is get the hell out. I, it's you want to stand and fight, but at a certain in a certain aspect, you're surrounded by useful idiots. People are brain dead by and large. The average IQ for this country is like 15 points above retard. I mean, we are in idiocracy, literally, like the movie. And so I don't see he gets elected, which I think he's on track to do because he Eric Adams is not polling well, and I don't think people are going to vote for Sliwa like they should to save the city and institute broken windows theory of policing again. The city's going to go down the toilet, and what ultimately a lot of this stuff is by design. We spoke about this many times before, but out of chaos comes order, right? They want this to happen because then what happens is you have the people who are in the cave using Plato's allegory start to rattle their chains and say, man, please, Father Government, we need you. Come and save us. Save us. We can't deal with this anymore. And so then what happens? You have the people who are thirsty for control, that were thinking about doing this the whole time, say, no problem, we'll save you. We're going to need to take a look at some things that you're up to, and we're going to need you to open up your lives a little bit more and have a little bit less freedom. But don't worry, we'll decide what's best for you because we're the government after all. We're supposed to help you. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So, in my estimation, get the hell out of here while you can. Go west, and even think about potentially, having a second place to go outside of the country. Even there's a great book. I've been going through it. It's called Strategic Relocation. It's in its fourth edition. It talks about some of the best places in the country that you can go for what's coming, which is, like I said, a great reset.
Well, I'm gonna give my remarks, and I'll let you have your last remarks, Shamation. Then I'm gonna go to Michael. But so what if people pray? There's nothing wrong with that. And the Muslims in New York, they have been praying in the middle of Times Square at the end of Eid or during Eid. They get permits to do it. So as far as allowing Muslims to pray, again, these are people who, utilize the political system, for to get certain needs or policies for their particular group. And there's nothing wrong with that. I am starting to see a lot of anti-Muslim, rhetoric. And listen, if the Trump administration gave $95 million to in anti-Semitism grants, well, you're gonna have to kick out some of them grants for the Muslim community as well. This is America, where it is a melting pot where all religions and backgrounds and cultures and races are welcome. And I don't want anyone harassing my grandkids who are Muslim, and the oldest one who wears a hijab. You're not going to sit up here and harass her, you know. So, and I don't want the country to go into that direction. However, I don't support Mandani because he is a socialist slash communist. I do support Mayor Eric Adams, and it's too early to say he's not faring well in the polls. So I disagree with you, Peter. And that other guy, he's from the Red Angels or something. He's old and washed. Ain't nobody voting for him. So Mayor Eric Adams is doing it right as an independent. Mayor Bloomberg, when he ran as an independent, he's going to have Trump backing him. Eventually, Trump will endorse him. He already has Wall Street and the hedge funds backing him. So, yeah, I think he's going to get reelected. And I do support Eric Adams. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. Even though I left New Jersey, I'm not even in New York. But people from New York, if you do leave, please don't come to Ohio. Skip over Ohio. But go ahead. I'm gonna have you get the last
Yeah,
remarks.
Dana, I want to clarify what I said. It wasn't regarding people of Muslim faith that I had a problem with. It is exactly what you spoke about, which is the communist Marxist element of Mandami, and what that's going to bring out, and what some of the policies that they're trying to put into place will ruin the city, and it'll never come back. So I wanted to echo what you said there, and it's not related to somebody who's practicing Islam.
Right. All right. So
May I make one real quick remark? New York, look, you're the guys that came up with this limitation on the size of a soft drink that can be served at a fast food restaurant where everything up in there is bad for you, but you're going to focus on nothing bigger than 16 ounces worth of Coca-Cola or Sprite or Pepsi can be sold because it's bad for your health. That's New York stuff, all right?
And that was Bloomberg, Judge. Remember? I remember when he put that in. You could have a soda. You could have 2 sodas. You could have 3. You just can't have a giant soda. It was such a clown show.
I know. I mean, it's like this is the biggest city in America, one of the major cities in the world, and you've got regulations on what size soft drink you can buy in a fast food place.
okay. All right. So Shay Mason, you get the last word. Then I'm gonna go to Michael.
Okay, thank you. Wow, this is a complicated uh, case, political case, but I would say New York is dirty politics. I've been involved for a I've been an advocate for like 25, 30 years. All those people you mentioned, I kind of like know them. Mandami is kind of like new. And this is going to be a ride. I don't support any of the candidates. And there are a couple of independent candidates that they're not highlighting, they're not supporting. And that's disgusting to me. I also tried to run for mayor. I know New York very well. And I had a lot of fights with the big guys of New York for a lot of years because of their discrepancy, their discrimination, their racism, and their political bullshit and, falsity. So, being that said, also I'm a Black Power girl too. I'm also, Adolf's and I'm a freedman. So I see the sufferings daily and it's increasing for Americans. So that's a big problem. And I have an issue with we have a large population here that to me should not be here. And they have a lot of control and they were placed in seats, okay, that we should be in actually running the country and running the city. So being that said, I'm a fighter, Pete, and I don't want to run because that's just in my blood. So, and we're taking the Board of Election to court, and I am personally. So there's a lot of favoritism on corruption, and that needs to stop. For my children, Dana, and my grandchildren who are also here. But the potentials are the opportunities, not potential. There's a limit to it, if you knew what I mean. And I don't want to see them around New York City Hall every day, even though I've known Muslims, but to see that every day is just suspicious to me, and it's very uncomfortable given the things that's been happening all across the country. And I don't particularly care for foreign entities to have access to things that we fought for a lifetime. Thank you.
All right, Michael.
Actually, to the contrary, I kind of believe that Maudami would be good for New York, and I think it would be good for the nation because being that he does support communism, Maudami is basically ripping off the mask of what the Democrats are putting forth. Democrats are so comfortable hiding behind what this whole United States image should look like. I think someone like Maudami is coming in there and basically saying, "Hey, this is what we are. I'm a Muslim, but I support LGBTQ. You can too. It just it's just kind of ironic, but I do think it's something that is necessary for a change and for people to wake up and say, okay, we're getting played and we've been getting played for a while. This is asymmetric warfare at its absolute greatest, and they're doing it right in our faces, really. Um, Now that being said, with this two-party system, Democratic and Republic, I do believe that it's very, very healthy for a nation to have competition economically, in government. I think it's good. I really believe in that. I don't think we should ever get a third party. I truly believe we need to reform and we need to try to find what really works best for these two parties. Now, that being said, what's realistic on that note is what incentive do they have to make it better? Not what we think, right? What is going to incentivize Congress to actually do better? And you know what? There's so many things going around and so many speculations that's going around. I truly believe in term limits, right? Just 1 year, 6 years in term, no pension. Give him $10 million per congressman, and then as soon as he's done, get out. Now, reason why I say more money is because that incentivizes, right? That could incentivize someone that has knowledge and skill to do the job that they're doing. They don't have to go and get reelected. They can just focus on the task at hand. I think that would incentivize more talent to come into the board and more talent to come into Congress and actually provide for the American people and do their job. You know, so there's a lot of things that can go on, but I just want to touch base on that when I heard you bring up the New York Adams. I actually forgot my first point, but I landed there.
Let me
I
put
like it.
something out there quickly. One of the problems with term limits is that quite often when you have them, the person that holds the office has termed out just about time they learned what they were supposed to be doing. And one of the things is that people get turned out all the time. It's just we are used to things being done the easy way now, so we want it done easily. If you don't like an SOB, turn him out. And that happens quite often. So maybe we need to understand why we want term limits and see if there's another way to address them, because the term limits substitute ignorance and incompetence for what we are getting, which is corruption, lack of character, and lack of accountability, because the public is getting what it deserves because the public does not pay attention to what's going on, and therefore it gets the consequence, which is the wrong type of person slipping in because nobody's looking too closely, and we go for slogans rather than substance. I'll pass.
Okay.
Michael, I like your pun on Mandami's name too. What Mao Dami? That was great. If anybody missed that, Chairman Mao.
Yeah,
Good one.
and if I could reply to the judge, real quick, I I get that, but at the same time, I think there's a big existential threat to our nation right now. The FBI has claimed that China is the number one threat. I do actually firmly believe that. just from my life experience and just from what I've come to realize, no one's gonna say it, right? Because it just sounds like old rhetoric, right? No one believes in communism no more, but it is a real threat, and they really are trying to subvert everything about the West and everything about the United States of America, right? So this existential threat that is out there looming is very well infiltrating and getting in the pockets of these senators that have been in positions like Nancy Pelosi, right? Like that have just benefited so much off the technology that these Chinese companies that are promoting, that are using the data, gathering up all the data to literally use against us, and we're paying them for it. So, I feel like the ends justify the means when it comes to the term limits. And I can go on, but that'll be it.
I don't have a problem with your contention, sir. It's a wise one. The only problem is that are you going to get an inexperienced crook or an experienced crook? And the problem is neither one delivers good governance. Now, your remarks about the People's Republic of China are on point. We have 300 plus million people in this country, probably 400 million what with the illegal immigration over the last 4 years. But China has that 300 million plus an extra billion. It doesn't cost somebody 2 cents to continue his education or her education as far as is possible in China. But getting an education here is financially ruinous, and you still don't get a chance to do much with it. China pushes a work ethic extremely hard. We don't. China has implemented a man up program or campaign officially. We have had a rainbow campaign. They put you on a wall and shoot you when you mess up. We let you get away with it and write books and get several $1 million stipends, and everybody holds you up as a counterculture hero. They have strict accountability. They have a plan. They're rigorous about what they do, and they stick with the plan and they carry it out. In a lifetime, they have jumped from being a community, a nation of peasants, ignorant, quasi literate, if that, to being up on top of the technological heap. They are pushing the envelope when it comes to extending science, technology, engineering, and math. They have universal military service. They have huge resources devoted to the objective betterment of their society. And what do we have? We run around talking about our objective is some little punk boys in sports bras and panties competing against the girls and taking a pee in the girls' bathroom. And that's what we have been wasting our time on.
Okay.
Yeah, Judge,
Um.
to piggyback off that real
uh,
quick, and Michael, what you said, that is the future, right? And so if you look at what we're setting up to do, it's to institute drone warfare and robotics because there's not going to be enough men left to fight to save the republic. And so they're going to institute this and they're going to do it on a worldwide scale. And that's potentially in conjunction and a test case for social credit score, which is going on in China right now. And I think that they look to bring that over here by 2030. So we have less than 5 years to go for it. So prepare yourselves.
Don't be fooled. We do have that right now. Look at the insurance companies. You got to have a certain amount. Then they do all these background checks that give you a credit score or social credit score. If you can or cannot be insured, that is a fact. And these data mining companies and data brokers, it's already been here. I mean, that's all. That's all hoopla that it's gonna just now happen. But what I'm really worried about is this idea. Hold on one second.
Well, Michael,
real
wait till they
quick,
turn up your ability to spend money. That's the next step, right? What they did with, like they
let
did
me
with the
just do a
truckers.
let me just do a quick sidebar. Michael said, "Hold on for a second," and then we're gonna go to Melrose. Then oh, Bernard dropped down, but real quick,
I'll bring him
George.
back up.
Oh, okay. George, who the hell are you talking about something? And this was like almost an hour ago. May I ask you, please, to not eat into your microphone, nigga? No, I was hungry. And that was, the beginning of the show. And I'm gonna eat because I can. Yes, I called him a nigga, but even though he has a white picture on his profile, I don't give a damn telling me what I should and should not do. If I want to eat in this damn microphone, y'all gonna hear me smack, chew, swallow. That was it. Um, Melrose. Melrose then Bernard.
Peace, family. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes.
Yo,
We
it's a
can hear
pleasure
you.
to. It's a pleasure. I wasn't talking to you. Who was that?
That was Peter.
Stay in your place, Peter. Once again, it's a
Oh,
pleasure
peace,
to
peace, 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 God.
stay in your place. Yeah, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Shouts to the judge. It's an honor to be in your presence. Yeah, these sound like a bunch of scared white boys up here. But Dana, I wanted to ask if maybe I misunderstood something you were saying. You said that Eric Adams or Hochul, they recently gave $94 million to the Jewish community. And I understand that, that's whatever. But then you said you've been seeing anti-Muslim rhetoric or something, and that they should give some funding to that because you have a grandchild that's Muslim. I wanted you to elaborate on that if possible.
No, not Eric Adams, the Trump administration. So it's federal grants, $94 million in federal grants to fight anti-Semitism. And then when I'm talking about as far as anti-Muslim rhetoric, when I see it on social media a lot now, um, a lot of bias, a lot of racist remarks. Now, have we seen or heard of anyone non-Muslim bringing harm to a Muslim? No, it was just the one little boy who passed away because his, piece of shit landlord stabbed him. Um, I think he tried to stab the mom, but the mom
Danny,
survived.
your mic is going out. I don't know where.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was covering it. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, um, where did you hear me clear at?
No, you said they gave 94 million to fight
Oh, okay,
anti-Semitism,
yes.
and
That was the federal government. That was Trump, not Mayor. I didn't say Mayor Eric Adams. Federal government gave 94 million in federal grants for anti-Semitism. So, and I'm hearing a lot of Muslim rhetoric and, racist remarks towards Muslims on social media. I have not seen or heard of any actual hate crimes against Muslims except for the little boy in Chicago that was stabbed by his landlord, and I think he got life in prison. So I hope they whoop his ass in prison. But yeah, so again, nothing hasn't happened. However, a lot of times when people talk a lot about anti this, anti that, when it comes to a particular group, it's just a matter of time that something may pop off. And yes, all of my grandchildren are Muslim. The oldest one, she wears her hijab every time she walks out the house. So I feel as though people should not harass or commit a hate crime towards Jewish people or anybody. And that should be extended to Muslims. So it seems like our society here is trying to make Americans choose Muslims or Jews or Israel or Palestine or whatever. And so, yeah, so that's the clarity. That's what I said.
God bless your grandchildren. But my whole thing was, and I can correct me if I'm out of pocket, but my whole thing is your FBA and your grandchildren are FBA. And even though their religious practice may be, Muslim or whatever, I just don't feel comfortable. And it's not my place to tell you or anybody else what to do. But for us foundational Black Americans to be advocating for some general vague Muslim tangibles, because then you'll have people like Peter and Michael in here claiming to be $5 Muslims. So I just wanted to say that, and with that I'll land. And yeah, you white boys, y'all sound
Well,
scared.
Muslims and
Yeah.
Muslims
Are,
and
are you
Muslim,
like that,
that's a religion.
Melrose? Tell
Hold
us
on for a
about your
second.
history. Are you like that?
Hold on for stop, Peter. Hold on for a second. Muslims and race, those are two different things. So whether I'm Black American or not, if I'm Christian, I'm Christian. If I'm Muslim, I'm Muslim. If I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish. So if And here's the thing. Now my grandchildren, they're mixed. So their mom, my daughter, yes, she's Black American, but their father, he's African American. He's from Egypt, or he was born here, but then he was raised in Egypt, came back here. So she converted to be a Muslim. However, when you see my grandkids, some people may think that they are looking more Arabic a little bit, but they are, people would say, okay, they're color, the people of color. So because they're Muslim, you're gonna attack her because she's Muslim, even though not knowing that she is Black American. So again, it doesn't matter what my point is. It doesn't matter what race you are. You should not you should not have any discourse against someone regardless of their race, their gender, their sexuality, and their religion. So every time when I see, like, when, okay, so people don't like Mendandi or whatever because he's a socialist. I get it. But but he's also a Muslim. So they thought, oh, he's a terrorist and he's a Muslim
Pardon me, but he's
sympathizer.
like Ugandan or something, or Indian,
Yeah, the
correct?
point,
Pardon
but
me.
no. But the point I'm trying to make here is he's a problem because he's a socialist, not because he's a Muslim. But there are people on social media, on the internet, and even in real life, they don't know how to separate the two. They're thinking, oh, he's a Muslim and that's bad, and he cannot be mayor of New York. His religion has nothing to do with it. It is his ideology when it comes to his political ideology, and people are intertwining things, and that is a problem. But go ahead.
But and
And
Danny,
that's
he
why
does
these
support
white boys
Hamas.
like Peter and Michael are so scared because they're losing to Indians, they're losing to the blacks, they're losing to the Jews, they're losing to AI, they're losing the social credit programs in China. You got a bunch of scared white boys up here. But it's been a pleasure, Dana and the judge. Once again, take care, keep doing the great work, and I'll get back down to listening.
Appreciate it,
Fellas,
Melrose.
I'm not even
All
white.
right.
I'm
Real quick,
Adom. I'm
yeah, hold
American
on.
descendant of mafiosi.
Okay, so the judge, you need to drop down. He just texted me saying he can't hear. So, judge, drop out and come back in.
I can hear again. I
Oh,
came
okay.
back on. All
Oh,
right.
okay, that's
Can I,
fine.
can I make a quick comment? By the way, it's
Well, hold on,
interesting
Wilson. I have
development.
another person ahead of you. I have to go to.
Okay.
Is Bernard still up here? Yeah, Bernard. Then I
Okay.
don't know if this Dolo
Yeah,
still up here.
I'm here.
No.
I'm here.
Okay, so it's Bernard. Then it's going to be Black Boy Joy. Then Wilson.
Hey, I heard the issue about term limit, and I'm conflicted with that. But I will go back and remind people in our short history, there was a guy named William Wilberforce who was anti-slavery. Spent his whole lifetime. It took him a whole lifetime to eventually see Great Britain ended slavery. We have a lot of bad politicians, sadly, tragically. But sometimes, like Judge says, at what cost, at what expense will it come to us? But to this issue with Zoran and Islam, you know what? We want to parse this situation, but here's the first thing: Islam is incompatible with the U.S. Constitution. If you're practicing Muslim, because Islam is not just a religion; it's a political legal system. So it's an encompassing system. So when we're trying to separate, oh, he's just a communist. First of all, communism and Islam is trying to team up, even though they have two different systems to destroy the American Constitution. So if a Muslim is going to abide by the US Constitution, he has to either not be a true practicing Muslim, or they're practicing taqiyya, or when they get into more position of power, they try to call for more and more and more. That's what Islam is about. So we need to first educate
Well, can I
ourselves
wait?
about Islam.
Hold on a second, Bernard. Are you Muslim?
No, I studied it
So
though.
then,
I
how do you
studied
know
enough about it.
about? So then, how do you know about Islam if you're not? If you're not a practicing Muslim? Because
Because
so let me
I
let me
can
just
read.
say this. What you just what so what so what you, your opinion, which it wasn't
No, it's
just
not
an
my
opinion,
opinion.
it wasn't a
It's
fact.
not.
Let me speak, and I'm gonna let you speak. What you just said was your opinion, and you are entitled to your opinion. It's not a fact. You are not a Muslim. So you don't so you're saying because if you are a Muslim, which is the religion of Islam, that they already come with their own political ideologies that they're going to implement in American soil. So then you need to say the same thing for a Jewish, for a Catholic, for a Christian. You need to say it for all religions. Because one thing we do have here in America, which you may not be aware of, we have separation of church and state.
Okay. Will you let me speak since you interrupted me?
Well,
So
hold
first of
on.
all,
I could say hold on for a minute because this is my goddamn space. So we're not playing that game. So I was done, and it's your turn to speak. And I always give the speakers the last say. So we gotta have a back and forth, but you just need to watch your tone. So go ahead.
Yeah, try to have some decorum, Bernard.
It's probably a double mute.
Yeah, well, he needs to unmute because that's a long mute for him. So go ahead.
Bernard, you have to unmute your mic.
okay, all right. So what I'm saying is, I'm just stating a fact. Okay, you know, the facts don't care about what you're feeling or your perception. Islam is incompatible with the U.S. Constitution. Our religious system, the religious system that created America, is Christianity that came out of the common law. I think Judge would be able to give me a little background on that. Secondly, the first war America ever fought was against Islam, the Barbary pirates. And what the founders said was, we need to study Islam to understand what it is, because so they started translating Islam, or the Quran, into English, so America would know exactly the nature of their enemies, because they were telling us from back then Islam is not compatible with the US Constitution. They were saying that out loud, they're saying it today. So my point is this: Islam, if you're truly practicing Islam, then you're going to conflict with the US Constitution. That's just the reality of things. Yes, we're separation of church and state, but in the sense that you are free to practice your religious belief, but when it comes to leadership, what will you abide by when Islam is saying your religion comes before the government, or your religion is part of governance? Versus in Christianity, your worldview might shape how you see the world, but it cannot override, well, we're going to have a theocracy because I'm a Christian. Because within the common law system that created this republic, created the Constitution, there's liberty. Islam has no such thing. It, in fact, violates your First Amendment rights. So we need to educate ourselves as to what we're dealing with. And Dan, I'm not trying to, this is just my tone. I'm not trying to come at you any way or any disrespectful tone. It's just that I'm tired of seeing people trying to parse what their, you know, Islam is and it isn't. Talk to a Muslim. Talk to someone who practices. I don't have to practice. I've studied it enough. I've read enough. I have friends who are Muslim, and they will tell you. And you can see it throughout. Wherever they gain majority, they try to implement Sharia, which is part of their legal system. And that's all I'm saying. We can sit there and play ignorant to that fact, or we can understand the nature of who we're dealing with and what we're dealing with. And that's my point to that. So yes, he's when it comes to leadership, it is a problem.
So where
It
so
is a
where so
problem.
where are you from?
Well, may I
Where hold on
offer
for a
this?
second, Judge. Hold on for one
Can
Judge,
I
hold on
please
for one
push
second.
back?
Where are you from? Your background.
Jamaican born.
So you could see what you just said and what you just laid out again is your own perspective. It's not fact. What you just laid out, we could apply that to a foreigner. We can apply so and then when you're saying that, which is not true, Muslims are the only ones that go against politics or no override politics. That's BS. Because Catholic, we could say that for every single religion. So what I'm saying to you, this is it's not just it's a disagreement. I'm telling you what you're laying out is your own personal perspective. It is not a fact. You're not a Muslim. You don't practice or study Islam. People in my family have been lifelong Muslims, so they know the Quran, and my grandkids know how to speak Arabic fluently. They have read the Quran, they're studying the Quran every day, and they're not running around here, being ignorant like I'm hearing most adults. So, again, if you feel as though that you don't want a Muslim to be elected in any type of political office here in America, well, then you sound like a bigot, sir, because we already have Muslims who are city councils, who are
Obama.
mayors, who are in Congress. We have Jewish
So
people who are in those positions.
so
There are
Dana, so
people.
Dana,
I need you to don't interrupt me. There are
okay.
people in this country from all over the world, from every single race, every single culture, every single religion. We have American citizens legally here already, and been like this for decades. So all of a sudden now, when you have this socialist running for New York City mayor, people want to sit there and say, "Oh, he's a Muslim, and that's going to be a problem." That's ignorance. But go ahead, Judge.
Well, I was going to make this observation. If you total up the Americans who have been killed due to hostile action, the overwhelming number of them were killed by Christians. Take the Revolutionary War against England, Christian country, Great Britain, with an official Church of England, was against what became the United States that had no official religion. You can put the Barbary pirates in there, but there were a good number of Christians down in Tripoli as well. But then there's the War of 1812. That's another set of Christians against religiously neutral country, us. Let's see, there is the Catholic situation when we had the Mexican American War in 1848. Okay, let's say the American Civil War, which the total casualties of the American Civil War exceed those of every other war the United States has been in combined. That was Christian against Christian. Breaking it down, that was internal to the United States. Then let's see, there was the Spanish American War that was basically Catholic because it was Spain against a country. Let's see, there is the Kaiser in Germany that we had a great hate against in World War One. That was a Christian nation. We had World War Two. Let's see, we had basically Catholic Italy. We had Protestant Germany that we fought against. So if you add this up, the danger to America does not come from Islam, it comes from Christianity. Next thing, if you want to look at it in terms of lethality, next thing, I'm personally acquainted with some devout Muslims who are in the armed services of the United States and have made careers of that. At least one I know was a CIA agent, CIA officer, and there are some that are FBI agents. A lot of them are police, and they keep law and order. So I think that might be a little bit off when it comes to threats to the United States come from a specific religion. I would offer this: religion may not have anything to do with it, because let's take Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. He has on often occasion declared himself to be an atheist. He does not believe in a deity. So he is Jewish in culture, but he's not Jewish in terms of a faith when it comes to a deity, which is perhaps the definitive part of the whole thing. So maybe what we need to do is just consider this guy in New York a crank, because we certainly have those in Islam who believe in the capitalist principle. A lot of them made a lot of money on the trade routes, uh, selling silk, the camel caravans, and all that other stuff. And he's talking about naturalizing the grocery stores and everything else over in New York, so the government of New York would be running them. So he's not exactly being a typical follower or believer in Islam. He is a socialist. And socialist, let's see, the biggest one, didn't it start off being Russia, which was a good Christian country, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which it still is to an extent. And then let's say we had Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, and some other things that led China to become what it is. It's communist, but it's not Islamic, nor is it Christian. So, how can we want to put this all on religion when if you really want something out there, you better go take a look at the rainbow. They're doing a lot more damage, and they've got your children from 4 to 18, and that's 5 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, all during the school year. They're trying to cram the principles of rainbow down their throats, and some of them want to cram something else down there too. So maybe we need to pay attention to what's going on and deal with the difficult things we have to do to counter what is negative instead of trying to assign it to some particular ethnic group. And I know some of that particular ethnic group, Muslims, followers of Islam, are some very patriotic and devoted American citizens. So that might be a little bit unfair and unwise to try to
Right.
blame them.
And even to really quick jump in on that rainbow topic, you know, my brother is actually a part of that community, and you know they do some devious things at times. He's told me that they've broken into like the preschool, and like they've had orgies in there, and there's all types of little demonic things going on. So you can't just brush it off on the Muslims and things of that nature. That's asinine.
Okay, that's not what I'm saying. So if I can, and Dana made mention something about Catholicism. The reason why we have America is because of Catholicism. We're a Protestant.
No,
We're
we
built
don't,
by
sir. No, we
Protestantism.
don't. No, we
No,
don't.
no,
No, we
no,
don't.
no,
No, let me mute your silly ass for a second. Let's mute you for a sec. That ain't why we have America, honey. It's the opposite. Because they were fleeing. Who was it? The Protestants. It's the Protestants that came over here in the Mayflower. Do we need a history? The judge, should we go down history? Do we is it history?
It was a Protestant sect, Puritanism, that wanted to get away from what was going on in England, where you had a good battle between the Episcopalians and the Presbyterians and the Catholics, depending upon what part of the country you were in.
Thank you. All under the Christian umbrella. So let's slow that dumb shit down. That America, and this is the problem I have with you immigrants. That especially the fresh ones or the ones that refuse to educate yourselves on American history. So we're not going to sit up here and cape for the Catholics like that, because they got a lot of shit with them. Because it was a time, I believe, wasn't it under Queen Isabel, when they were
allow me to
boiling
speak,
the
please, because
Jews?
you interrupt.
When they were boiling the Jews? Oh,
Queen
they're very
Elizabeth,
nasty.
Queen Elizabeth the First.
I thought it was Queen Mary, Bloody Mary.
That was later.
She's a Catholic, and she said, "Oh, kill all of the Protestants."
Yeah, that was part of that process that came Henry VIII
But in
and
Spain,
all.
they were boiling Jewish people.
That's Torquemada. What they were doing is Ferdinand and Isabella, who funded Christopher Columbus's explorations. King Ferdinand, who married his queen, who didn't live too long, though he lived for a very long time. He was a Jew. He was a converser. He converted. So he converted from Judaism to Catholicism. What happened is a few years after that, you got a priest who was conniving. His name was Torquemada, and he convinced the authorities to have an inquisition to see if the Jews and the Muslims, who had been given a choice to either leave what was El Andalus, now Spain, or convert, had reconverted from Catholicism back to either Judaism or Islam. So we got a real big bad thing going on, and that's when you started getting people burned at the stake and tortured and put on the rack
Right.
for
So,
all kinds
so
of
hold on
things.
for Bernard. I'm gonna go to Dolo because one thing I don't like that's a real big pet peeve is pseudo historians. But stay right there for a second, Bernard. I'm gonna go to Dolo.
No, you misconstrued my word. Let me finish what I was saying. You
Okay.
didn't listen to what I was saying. You didn't. Allow me to speak. You keep doing that and you keep saying things that I'm not saying. I said America would not exist if it wasn't for Catholicism. And the next point I was about
And
to
that's
make,
why I fucking muted you. That's why. That's why. And that's why I said I'm gonna go to Dolo because I have a pet peeve of pseudo historians. And I know you said that. And that's why I said you're wrong. You sound crazy. Catholicism don't got shit to do with America. Sorry, it doesn't. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
gosh.
So
Allow me to finish
no,
my
I don't want
statement,
no.
please. Just
Okay,
allow
so
me.
let me make
But
myself. I'm sorry,
allow me. No,
Bernard.
no, no, no. You're
No,
misconstruing.
Bernard. Let me make myself clear. I'm going to the next speaker. I will swing back to you once I get through Dolo, Wilson, Sam, and El Hotep. I'll swing back to you if you're still up here because I still have to go to Michael then you. So I'm going to the next speaker. That's what we're doing right now. I'm sorry. Sorry, but I'm not sorry. Go ahead, Dolo.
Might be a double mute, but Dolo, once you can come off your mic and you got the
Yeah, get
floor.
off that
Yeah,
Catholic shit. Go ahead.
yeah. Thank you, thank you. It seems like Bernard's just doing the classical tether babble, um, and it's really a waste of time. And it kind of throws the whole conversation off track because, quite honestly, I forgot everything I was about to say when he just started doing that. So, if you don't mind just skipping to the next person, I'll recollect my
Okay,
thoughts.
no problem. The Wilson, how are you?
Yeah, yeah, same as the last guy. I just wanted to make one quick comment that race, whether it be race or religion, both of those are protected classes, right? And you know, it's one thing to say that a Muslim person can or shouldn't be able to run for public office. Um, if they were to get in office, they're still bound by the Constitution, either way it goes. And, that I would say that that's the reality of that. I think Dana has a point in the sense that, considering all these other religious groups, have, unfettered access at these pathways, it shouldn't, Muslims shouldn't be excluded. That's what it means to be American, you know. However, there are some other things I disagree about, but just for brevity purposes and to keep the conversation going, I just wanted to establish simply just that race and religion both are protected classes.
Yeah. Sam.
Yeah, thank you. I hate to talk about it. I wanted to correct some things Bernard said because I'm actually a convert from Islam, so I'm very well versed in Muslim understanding and Christian understanding. And you simply don't know what you're talking about, Bernard. America's stance on religion is freedom of religion, meaning anyone could practice any religion they would like. Foundationally in Islam, it is taught there's no compulsion in religion, which means you can't force religion on people. You can give people option, but you can't force your religion on them. So that isn't incompatible with America. It's almost parallel with America. So you're irrational for saying that. Regardless, every religion teaches people to prioritize their faith in their Lord over their government or their governing bodies. Most religions also have a caveat where it says, respect the governing bodies, but the Lord always comes first, whether it be Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or any of that. Sometimes I feel like, and this isn't against you, Bernard, I think we have a lot of this going on today, whether it be you towards Islam or people towards Jewish people. But I feel like we as people, rather than looking at mirrors and judging ourselves and trying to improve on our own flaws, we always trying to find a bad guy. And I think you're just trying to make Islam the bad guy for things that are simply human. We're all flawed. Until we can acknowledge that, we're not going to make progress if we keep finger pointing. That's all. I'm not gonna be too long with it.
No, I love what you're saying, and and I appreciate you resetting the room with that, Sam. And again, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have not thoroughly studied, if you are not a Muslim, because listen, if you are Muslim, you should be studying the Quran and the history of Islam, but a average person is not studying um Islam at all. The history, nothing of it. But people have these preconceived ideas. And that is part of human nature. We all have preconceived ideas with certain things. However, when it comes to the American Constitution and our politics, um, our Constitution is separate when it comes to religion. So, and that was one of the main foundations of establishing America, is to free yourself from the crown to be able to um, govern yourself and worship whatever you want to worship. So, who was next? El Hotep.
Hey
Hotep, you're up.
Dana, what's up? What's up? Pete, what's up? Judge, what's up? How you guys doing?
What's
All
up,
right.
man?
I just kind of wanted to address some of the things Bernard was talking about. I didn't get everything he was saying, but I got a little bit enough to maybe ask a question. I wanted to find out if he was aware of the doctrine of discovery. Um, I'm more than sure. I don't, like I said, I don't know if he is or isn't, but I don't want to assume he's African neither. But if he is, most Africans are not Catholic by choice. Um, Most of them are, particularly Nigerians, they're either Yoruba or Igbo. I just want to point some of that out because he's speaking as if Catholicism hasn't done anything, or it's just innocent religion. I do want to give them time to address some of the stuff that he was speaking about, but I do just want to point that out that if he is an African, he should be mindful that Catholicism has done a great deal on his nation. So just be mindful of that, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm annoyed that now the conversation is centered around religion and cheating away from politics. And I think people just need to get refocused and not focus on what one person who's just, probably not intentionally ignorant, but are ignorant. And when it comes to certain aspects of Islam and the American history and our Constitution and just politics overall. So I'm gonna swing back to Michael and then Bernard. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I hope I didn't put out there or try to paint the image that I was against Islam in any way, shape, or form. My first friend was actually Pakistani, devout Muslim. So it's not the fact that it's a Muslim who's running for office. That I believe in freedom of religion, and I believe that that's what makes this country great. It's the sole fact of telling people you're Muslim while practicing and pushing ideas that are absolute contrary to what it is that you say that you're practicing, which makes you a liar as a person, right? And we don't need any more of those type of people. It's not the fact that he's Muslim. So, as a matter of fact, I do believe that Muslims have a lot of good, like a lot of good values, a lot of strong values. Do I agree with all of them? No, but can I exist with them? Absolutely. In this state, in this country that we're given, I believe that's the bedrock. Is um, not so much accepting, even though that's kind of what it's turned into with our universities teaching it, but it's absolutely knowing where you stand and understanding people can have their opinions too, and you can still work to achieve prosperity, right? I don't have to win for you to lose. You don't have to lose for me to win, right? I can win and you can win. And that's what I would like to see. And I think that's the message that we should be pushing. And um, if we can get our kids really to understand that there is three things that when you look at the whole statistic about things, if they at least finish high school, right? Get a full-time job and wait until age 21, right, to marry and have children. That was a study that says 2% of those people were in poverty and nearly 75% of them have joined the middle class, which I think is a big step up from where we're going right now because we don't have no morals, we don't have no standards. And I think our society is kind of a little too open, right? It's becoming more and more open and more exploited. And the people that are exploiting this country and doing all this stuff, I think that's where we need to be looking.
Appreciate that. Bernard, I saw you type. You couldn't hear. Can you hear now? That was like 30 minutes ago.
Yes, I can hear. Um, Anyone who have ever read anything that I've written about separation of church and state will realize that I'm not a fan of the Catholic Church. So let me start with that because what I was saying, the Catholic, starting with Martin Luther, let's go back to that because that's where I was going. Because it was a Catholic Church prosecuting Christians, prosecuting that went to, they said the Church of England, which was still Catholic, that was prosecuting the Puritans who end up forming America. So my statement that if it wasn't for Catholicism, we wouldn't have any America is a point that I'm trying to make about separation of church and state. And that's why I was saying you're reading me wrong and just allow me to just make my point. So, to my point, it's not just Islam. What I was talking about like this, I see the same dangers with Catholicism, and in fact, I believe this new pope poses a danger to our republic with him being American, because now there's a backdoor to do more damage to the fabric of our country. So one, to sit here and say, oh, I'm ignorant. One of the things as an immigrant I pride myself in is to learn the American Constitution, is to learn what made America what it is. So first of all, so when I'm talking about Islam, again, Judge made the point. I know I have friends who are Muslims, and they will, you cannot, you have to make a choice because Islam is defined as an all-encompassing political, religious, legal system. So when you're in position of leadership, this is a question that I'm going to ask. How do you ignore Sharia law or what Islam says in a particular situation? So that's what I know, what I understand Islam to be. That's the point I'm trying to make. So when you're trying to tell me about separation of church and state, I believe the state role should be limited. I don't believe that the church and the state functions are two different things. The church is to win men to Christ. The government job is to punish evil. One of the biggest things that I said when Obama was pushing the rainbow cult back in 2011, I said the greatest attack against this country was going to come from the LGBTQ, whatever you want to call them, cult, because there is no stopping how far they will not go. So you're trying to paint me as something that I'm not, and I'm trying to make a point. It might sound foreign, but the reality is I'm pointing out something that we need to be aware. Why did Zoran identify himself as Muslim if it wasn't important to him? Why is he going out there crying about anti-Muslim when he's making it about Muslim and he's not talking about the communism or the, this guy family grew up in Uganda and he wasn't born when Idi Amin was doing all the crap he was doing, his anti-capitalistic thing, but he's trying to bring Idi Amin anti-capitalistic system into America. So I know my history. I might not know it all. That's why, I listen to Judge Brown. I love it because he breaks things down. And Judge, when it comes to murder, I think atheism has done more damage than Christianity. Atheism through communism has done far greater damage to this world than we can imagine. Doesn't negate what Christians or Catholicism have done. To your point, Catholicism have done a lot of damages because the reason why we're in dark age for almost 1,000 years was because of Catholicism. So I do know my history, and what I'm pointing out is what the founders pointed out about Islam at its founding. We have to be careful. If you're an American, why aren't you talking about the American Constitution? Why aren't you talking about the capitalistic system? Why is everything you're promoting go back to what destroyed the country that your parents fled from, or where your Indians and all those people were expelled from? These are the things that I'm bringing up. So that it's not about religion. It's that you have to look at all those little details, and that's all I was saying. That's my point.
So let
This
me
is
ask
like,
you a question. You said that Mandandi, and I'm gonna come to Sam next. You said that Mandandi He's like, why is it the first thing he bring up is him being a Muslim? Well, it's nothing wrong with someone identifying their religion. There are other people who've done it. But my question is, what is that noise in the background? My question
Mm,
is, my question is, um, why do you think JFK tried to hide his Catholic identity? So, religion, people are judged and have been judged. Well, one of the
Bernard, you gotta mute your mic while she's talking.
yeah,
Oh, I don't
mute.
know if it's me. It's me. Okay.
So one of the people are judged. One of the things people are judged by are their religion, along with their race, along with their gender, along with their sexuality. But all those things, and I think that's you, Judge.
uh, really? I don't
Yes.
even hear any.
Can you mute?
I heard the noise and it stopped.
But no,
It
then
was
I'm hearing noise coming from you like wind or something. Can you just mute?
no, I
I,
hear that and then it stopped.
I think he was more around right when the guy muted himself. That's why it came for him a little bit.
Can you mute up
I,
too, Sam? Because there's noise coming from you as well. It was just some new movement coming out of your phone,
I,
Judge. But
I wasn't moving. My phone's
okay,
sitting on the
fine.
table.
All right. Well, anyway, people this country, people are going to judge people whether it's their race, their gender, their sexuality, or their religion. When you came up here, Bernard, you were leading with anti-Muslim rhetoric. You were. And then you're throwing in all these, I don't know if it's a language barrier because you're from another country, even though you're here. I'm pretty sure you're here legally. But the way you explain it, but some of the things you were saying was so much anti-Muslim to where your thing is, oh, well, if you practice Islam, then you're going to insert Sharia law in our government. No, you're not. That's not true. Sharia law is for you to practice in your own life. That has nothing to do with how you govern. Which is why we have not only a federal constitution, United States Constitution, but each state has a constitution that you must adhere to. So again, when I say the ignorance, the bigotry, the bias, there's been a couple of people even in this chat on YouTube who have the, and who I see on social media displaying those same sentiments when it comes to Muslim people. So I don't care that he says that he's Muslim. He's proud of being a Muslim man. There's nothing wrong with that. But his policies are socialism, and that is the problem, not his religion. That's what I'm saying.
May I offer something here in this discussion? As a factual matter, over a 10-year period, I did surveys where I found out a lot about the people that I sentenced or set bond for. It was a requirement. I had them evaluated. Atheists constituted the lowest percentage of the offenders, and almost invariably, when they did something, it was more like writing a bad check than anything else. The more devoutly religious someone was, or the background they had in religion, the more likely it was that they had committed some heinous crime, homicide, some particularly nasty act. Now, I'll give you an example of something that is associated with religion, but I'd like a religious response to it if anybody can. Hajibs. People think that is something associated with Islam. I don't recall anywhere in the Quran where it prescribes a hajib. I do find that that comes from an ancient cultural tradition that existed before Islam that is reflected in why Jewish women cover their heads when they go to a synagogue. Christian women wear those big floppy hats all the time. Or if you go in a Catholic church, a woman is expected to cover her head. I would suggest that that's where you get that from, not from Islam. And if anybody knows any passages in the Quran or anywhere else that is Islamic, fundamental or foundational in its nature, please advise me. I study such things. So we have a lot of stuff that we associate with religions, specific religions, that really have nothing to do with them other than the fact that there are underlying cultures that are embraced when the religion comes to a certain area. I'll pass the mic.
I want to go to Sam and then Corliss and then Deborah. Go ahead, Sam.
Yes, yes. To answer what Brown was saying, it's not in the Quran. The hijabs are taught in the Hadith, and it's basically a gesture of modesty where you're preserving the best aspects of your spouse or females in your life to avert the gaze of men because men can be perverted and try to take advantage of women. So with the hijabs, you try to protect them, and that's taught in the Hadith literature, but it's not innate to Islam. It does have a history in all three of the Abrahamic religions and other non-Abrahamic religions as well. It's just an ancient form of, you know, protecting your spouses or females in your families or life, modesty. With that said, I agree with what Donna was saying, where his problem about being Muslim, he just announces that he's Muslim as a show of his virtue, or saying that you're religious is kind of showing off that you're a virtuous person, just like anybody saying they're Christian or anything like that. That being said, Sharia is just the Arabic word for law. And the Sharia, the Islamic Sharia is only applied in Islamic countries. If you're a governor that's a Muslim in a non-Islamic country, you defer to the Sharia of that country. So the Constitution is the Sharia of America, or law of America. So when you, that's what I'm saying. You don't know as much what you're saying, and sometimes people do that. I'm not trying to down talk you, dude, but I'm telling you, you're saying things that don't mean anything. You're just saying he's going to practice Sharia if he becomes a governor, but it's like, yeah, he's going to do the laws of America. He's not going to do Islamic law in America. Now, yes, Islam is a religion that's all binding. It teaches you every aspect of life, or how to approach or at least look at certain aspects of life. But there's caveats to everything, and there's like a priority list, meaning you wouldn't do Islamic Sharia law in a Constitution American country because it's a Constitution American country. They're the governing power that is, so you defer to that. That's why in ancient times Islam ideally was more all-encompassing and welcoming to diversity other than polytheists than other faiths like ancient Catholics and things like that. I actually wanted to ask a question to kind of just move on from this topic as a whole, but I kind of got lost in all the things I wanted to touch on, so maybe I'll come
Go
back or
ahead.
something. I'm lost for it right now. I think I wanted to ask basically something in the lines of religions are fine. The problems are when people become religious zealots, and that's for any faith. But I've noticed that America is inching more towards an oligarchy rather than a democracy. And I'm wondering if the judge or you guys have also noticed that. And is there any way to prevent us becoming an oligarchy where the rich control everything, basically? And it's more of a battle of influence rather than democratic vote or the people's voice being heard.
That's a good question,
My
Judge.
observation is that when people have a purpose and cause that they're committed to, they can deal with the system like we have. When they're adrift and can see no rhyme nor reason for their existence, they tend to be very weak and they want somebody to run them. So they seize upon those people who they think can do it for them. And that's what we are beginning to see right now. A system of entitlement, a system of being mothered from cradle to grave, a system of being taken care of and treated like you're some kind of child who is helpless in the face of adversity. That is consistent with being receptive to somebody doing everything for you rather than accepting your personal responsibility to be part of it. And if you're going to be part of it, you're part of the team, and that means you have to prepare so you can pull your own weight.
I mean, yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I was saying the last time, where it's about self accountability and people lack the awareness these days. Fair. Thank you.
Sam, I'd like to add, I don't think we're ever going to get away from being ruled by the wealthy, right? He who has the gold makes the rules, and I think that that's exactly what's been going on and is going to continue to go on. And might is always going to make right. So it underlines the foundation of everything, including the law in this country, right? The law doesn't, it means nothing unless there's people to enforce the law and have teeth to it. people that are going to come put hands, feet, and weapons to you, or else you're not going to follow that law. And I think that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day.
Hey, hey, Sam, I posted a
Yeah,
series of quotes from the Quran that talks about Sharia, and if you're a Muslim,
sure.
these are some of the things you adhere to. They're in the. I posted them in the chat, or in the
Yeah, I'll
group.
look at it.
So just look at those, and you tell me what does that mean? Uh, My thing is this. Judge brought up a point. There are a lot of people, Muslim, who have done great things in this country. It doesn't negate what the religion is and what leadership, what it entails to be in leadership. There have been several mayors as governor, and they pretty much abide by the system. But then, did they make their faith really the forefront of what they were doing? Not really. And that's why I say, if you're going to identify as a Muslim, then you should deal with the scrutiny that comes with you saying you're a Muslim. You don't get a pass. Just like a guy who's going to say I'm a Christian nationalist, he should be scrutinized if he's saying a Christian nationalist. If you're a Catholic, one of the reasons why JFK was hiding that he was Catholic was because people know the dangers Catholicism pose to our Constitution. You see, that's the thing. Just like with Islam, there's a part with Catholicism that does not respect separation of church and state. So if you are truly a Catholic, how do you rectify that? So it's the same. Understanding these things is important, and it's important for us to understand who we are. But if you're going to put an X on your forehead and tell me don't to ignore it, no, I'm not going to ignore that X. I'm going to dig. I'm going to look at it, and that's all I'm saying. There's a fundamental disconnect, and we cannot ignore those disconnect, or we ignore them to our own detriment and to our own peril.
Well, you could pay attention to that
Right.
because that's your own personal ideology and perspective and opinion. Again, that is not a fact what you just laid out. And that's what I'm getting at. So I want to go to Corliss
Dana,
and then Deborah
I
and then
just
the
posted a
Wilson.
quote
Thank you,
from the.
Dana.
I just post
Thank
Dana.
you,
No,
Dana.
I don't need a quote right now,
No, I
Bernard. I
just
need to go
posted
to
it in the
Corliss.
chat. It's not my
That's
Thank you,
opinion.
fine.
Dana.
That's fine. I need to
Just
go to
just drop
Corliss.
them down and let somebody else come up. Seriously. So Dana, thank you. Thank you for hosting another space with Judge Joe Brown. I love being in the space with Judge. Um, I got to see I get my news from the PBD podcast, and I got to see them give Judge Joe Brown some recognition with Alex Jones when they were referencing the Mar-a-Lago papers, and that was key to their argument of Trump trying to protect them from going in the archive and getting destroyed, because the FBI was, of course, acting under the Biden administration to go in there and get those documents, but not necessarily to protect them, but to destroy them. That being said, I've been listening since the beginning. There's so many things that I wanted to touch on. I'm not sure where to begin. Dana, can I give you some constructive criticism with support and love without getting your hackles up?
Not really, but go ahead.
Not really. I know. I'm saying it with a smile. All right. So let me start with this, and Judge Joe Brown, you can back me up on this if you want. The Supreme Court has said that the freedom of speech is expected to anger people. Okay? So when people say things that anger us, we don't need to engage them. We don't need to debate them. Just let them air themselves out. Say thank you. Is there anything else you want to add? Okay, well, we're going to drop you down, bring somebody else up. Because what it does is it kills the space. It derails all the other speakers that wanted to speak, as you heard, one after the other. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on is when people are using racist insults, right? They should be immediately dropped down, and you can, at your discretion, bring them back up. Because I would not come into space and start calling people blanketly, scared black boys. I wouldn't do that. And I would expect you to kick me if I said something insulting like that. So I'm saying that to support you out of love, because I love being in space with Judge Joe Brown, and also to keep the listeners, because I was watching the listeners just drop like flies. And when I speak because I know the judge is listening, I know you're listening, and I know everyone else is listening, and I'd like everybody to appreciate what I have to say just as much as the other
speakers have things that they offer are inspired by what you say and what Judge Joe Brown says. That being said, I really want to spell out why Christianity has failed America, okay? And my background is my family has been here since the beginning. They were the Puritans. And guess what? The Puritans are doing gay marriage now. So they ain't so pure, okay? The Catholics took over the Congress, took over the Supreme Court, took over, the White House with Biden. They know how to do politics. And basically, when you enter a political office like Mad Manny, okay, you're sacrificing your religion. Because every Christian knows that the gospel says when you take an oath, it's from the evil one. So when they're taking an oath of office, they're sacrificing their religion because they're going against the very gospel that tells them not to do that. Okay? So, and that's why America is in the situation that it is now. It's full of corruption. We're repeating a pattern. It's basically a new Babylon. You can read Revelations 18, and it describes America perfectly because we're repeating the same thing that Babylon did, made the nations rich and all this and that and all the corruption. That being said, I'm not Christian, okay? I never accepted Christianity. I knew something was wrong with it. I accepted Islam, okay? My son's Muslim. His mother's Muslim. And she survived communism in Yemen, okay? And I can tell you about Muslim communists because she survived it. And all Muslim communists did in Yemen was allowed Iran-backed Shia to take over Yemen, okay? So they're not really Muslim. It's basically, a cult mindset. And anybody in New York that becomes mayor is basically inserted. And I'm sure Judge Joe Brown is more knowledgeable about this than me. But mayors don't have any real power. They're not a senator. They're not a governor. They're a puppet. Okay? So if he's being allowed to become mayor, and I don't know why anybody hasn't questioned voter fraud. We all know that the governor in New Jersey should have been governor, and he just bowed out gracefully when he lost the election, and they're like, what, by all means, he should have been elected. Nobody's questioning voter fraud in New York, most corrupt city there is, and probably in the planet. And we have a communist Muslim. Okay, it's a contradiction. Okay, if you can't, what we say in Islam is if you're a Muslim and you're not practicing Muslim, you're a munafiq. Okay? And what this means is you're a hypocrite. But it's more serious in Islam. It means that you are condemned to the lowest depths of hell. Okay? That is a munafiq. And if you are a munafiq long enough, you become a pure munafiq. And that's coming from the Quran. And anybody can use ChatGPT here. Anybody can summarize the Quran. Look, I encourage Judge Joe Brown, if you don't have the app, get it. You can explore ideas and concepts based on the Quran, the Torah, whatever reference you want to use. You can dig into the yourself without having to go to an imam or going to any other individual. You can do this research yourself quickly and easily at your fingertips. But in the Quran, a pure munafiq is someone that God has put a seal on. They are no longer can turn to God. They are stuck like that. And the earliest example of this comes from the Torah and the Pharaoh. Moses went to Pharaoh many times and said, please let my people go. And the Pharaoh said, okay, and then changed his mind. And then finally, God took his free will. Okay? Everybody says we have free will. Oh, we do, but you can lose that free will. Okay? And that's what people don't understand. Oh, we have free will, free to choose. Some people don't. They are literally cursed. They are sealed for hell. These people like Jeffrey Epstein, these rich pedophiles, that our country has enabled and protected, these are seals on these people's hearts. There's no saving them and the people that support them. And you look at Dan Bongino, a professed Christian. You go back to his podcast. He pushed for the Epstein list, pushed and pushed. He said, never give up, never give up. As soon as he's in the FBI, all of a sudden his demeanor changes, his appearance changes, his colleagues notice it, his fans notice it. He's seen some things that's changed the way he feels about his country. And you could see it when he speaks. And this is a devout Christian that is fighting for his country, and there's nothing he can do. Basically, what politicians know is that.
Corliss, why is this about religion though? Why are you so into religion
Okay,
about
please,
this?
please, please don't interrupt me.
Yeah,
No,
please
because you're just on a
don't.
tangent though.
No,
You're
no,
on the
no,
whole
no, no.
speech.
Everybody stay. No, hemisphere, stay on your mic. Don't interrupt someone when it's their turn to speak. So he's replying to what was being said before. So go ahead, Corliss, you have the floor. It takes a minute, I guess, with the mute. Unmute, Corliss.
Yeah, it just took a minute, like you said. I wasn't ignoring you. Thank you for that. Yeah. So I was talking about Dan Bongino, and he is obviously the assistant to the director of the FBI, and he obviously is very close to the Epstein list. And we have just seen, and I learned from PBD podcast who Judge Joe Brown has been on. Did he drop down? I don't see him there anymore.
Yeah, he keeps dropping down. I sent him the co-host request. Let me invite
His
him to
connection
speak.
goes in and out.
Yeah, his connect. He's in listener,
Okay.
so I
Okay.
invited him up to speak.
All
So go
right.
ahead. He can hear you.
Okay. So, can you now?
Say something.
I just lost the.
Okay.
I just lost the Bluetooth connection. Let me get my headset back connected. I just gotta turn it off. Dana, can you hear me now?
You sound far away.
Dana.
Can you hear me?
Well, you could hear you. It's just it's a little muffled compared to how you were speaking.
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
a little bit.
Just go ahead and finish your submission.
Dana, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm gonna drop down and come back if you can hear me. I can't hear it.
Okay, go ahead. Drop down and come back. And
Now I can hear everybody.
okay, you couldn't hear. I don't know. I think this space is
Welcome back.
glitching. I think it's too much of. I think it's the title and too much religion talk. I don't know. But okay, so it's Deborah, the Wilson, and Hemisphere. And when Corliss come up, I'm just going to bring him up so he can finish up. Go ahead, Deborah. How are you?
Hi everybody, I'm good. I got in here late. It's nice conversation. As far as religion goes and the Constitution, like I have a really good friend who's Muslim, and one thing I learned about them is they're very peaceful people and they're very loving people. And I find that pretty cool because we actually need more love in the country. And when Judge was talking about the atheist, yeah, I find that atheists are nonviolent. I worked with the agnostic once, and I also find them to be very nonviolent. So the religion in America is interesting because, everybody can be who they want to be. And I also agree with the young man who said that Sharia law in America would mean the American Constitution. But I wanted to ask the judge because he's really well versed in history. Um, like the 400 years of religious fights, fighting or warring or whatever. Like America came after that, and I was also under the assumption that it was the Protestants, but I've also, the way I understand Catholicism is it kind of falls under that. But I was gonna ask him if he could explain that 400 years of war and then how America fell out of that, if he could.
When the Constitution was written, there were people involved who were the children of some old people and the grandchildren of others who had been involved in the wars of religion in Europe and knew how poisonous it could be. So they said, we will just ban the government from being involved in that. They had just gotten away from the Church of England and all of the hell that was brought on to the country over what version of prayer would get you into heaven or not, and who was going to help you find out by killing you off real quick. Religion is something that evokes extreme passion, and probably the best thing is to keep it as far away from what you do when you govern as possible.
Okay, that's good. And then with Bongino or the guy, I think when you become a politician, you really don't understand, the playing field. But then once you take the oath, and you take the oath, and then you have to mix amongst all of the rest of the politicians, and religion is not going to be the number one thing that you're following the rules to do your job. So I think the guy that they're talking about, Bongino, I guess he's had to step back from his religion because he is under the oath of the Constitution to follow the law to do his job. And I think that once anybody gets in there, they're going to change. They're going to pull back from their religion because they have to do their job first, which means you have to put your religion in your backpack. So that's all I have to say. And as always, it's a great space tonight. I got in late, but it woke me up. So thank you, Dana, for letting me speak.
Yeah, appreciate you. Corliss, okay, you're back up. Go ahead and finish up, Corliss, land your plane, and then I'm gonna go to the Wilson and Hemisphere.
Actually, I'm just gonna listen for a little bit because I lost my train of thought and I'm having technical difficulties over here. My Bluetooth keeps disconnecting.
Oh, well, you sound
So
loud
just
and clear
circle.
now.
I know, but my train of thought's gone now. So I gotta gather my thoughts again, reconnect with the conversation because I just don't like to hear myself talk and parrot things. You know what I mean? I like to engage. So yeah, just circle back once everybody else you get through the hands.
Well, I do know you
All
was
right, bye.
talking about Mangino. I know I'm saying his name wrong, but okay, I'll circle.
Bongino. Bond, like
Bongino.
Bon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Bond.
Bongino. All right,
Yeah.
I'll circle back. Go ahead, the Wilson. Oh, and I'm sorry. I didn't,
All right,
and I'm
thank
sorry, Peter. You are a horrible co-host, and I'm sorry because if I don't say it, you should say, guys, please bookmark, like, and repost the space. That's it. Three things, Peter.
I did that.
But you still worried about Diddy, Peter, the Diddy trial. So
Listen, Diddy is how we're going to eat for a little while. So we got to make sure the diddler is front and center.
that is true. But everyone, please repost, like, and bookmark this space. All right, go ahead, the Wilson. And then Hemisphere.
All right. Big shout out to everybody. Big shout out to Michael and big shout out to Bernard because both of those are my names too. But anyway, listen, I think it was Michael. He, a few conversations ago, he had mentioned, oligarchy versus democracy, right? And I got to be fully transparent here. Democracy is kind of, it's a D word. It's the D word to me. It's a trigger word for me these days because I think it's a fundamental error to describe the United States as a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, and this is what affords us the individual rights, right? The protection against, the idea of majority rule. And to blur, that distinction is not only inaccurate, but it influences, the fundamental understanding of what our government is. I think democracy is simply a subjective term that could be replaced with, another term that has a similar meaning. right? Democracy is just not mentioned in, our Constitution or our Declaration of Independence. So, and then also, being a firsthand experience of, the totalitarianism of the Democratic Party in California, it's truly undeniable. Okay, when you look at, who our senators are, who our Congress people are, who's running our judiciaries, who's implanted in our legislative, our governor, right, who's also appointing the judges and creating this loop of, systemic block to redress, and that's why I say basically I just want to challenge this whole our democracy thing. I think it's not just politically incorrect, it's objectively incorrect.
If I might make an observation, we select some of our
Please.
representatives in a democratic fashion. Some, not the president. We select the electors, the board of directors that selects executive officer democratically. But once you're in office, you're not expected to rule democratically because the people that drew this Constitution up were very leery of the ordinary person because the ordinary person was not educated, did not have a firm stake in the matter, and was too easily distracted. They had a method so that person could evolve and move up to the point where they were worthy of consideration and had a real stake in the outcome and an incentive to understand how it worked. But we select the people that run things perhaps democratically in some instances, but the
Right.
process is not.
And I agree with that. Sorry. Right. I agree with that. I'm simply just saying that, the term democracy, right, in and of itself is, can easily be substituted with a different term, right, to describe the same function.
Of course.
No, considering that, the Republican form of government is the formal guarantee in the Constitution.
It's a lot of this is theater for appearances, and a lot of this depends upon the enormous store of ignorance possessed by the American public who has chosen not to appreciate nor understand nor study what his system is about.
Right. Now, how would you grade my interpretation here about democracy? Just objectively, I'm
It's
wide
not
open.
bad. It's not outside of some of the definitions that could be applied to what actually is done.
Right, because when we consider the Republican Party, we can, reasonably, we understand that, the Republican form of government that has been codified in the Constitution, it's justified by definition, right? Whereas the Democratic Party, I would argue, really don't have intentions on upholding the Constitution, right? When you look at, their approach to immigration, right? It's like, their real problem is with the existing federal laws that are in play, right? Not whether or not, the executive branch of the government is, right or wrong in enforcing the law, right? And so I just think that, a lot of the left, the Democratic side, they like to, leverage, the judiciary, to, create legislative loopholes.
That's pretty much on point. I would say this. Both parties have been guilty of trampling on the Bill of Rights, but the Republican Party has gotten over that because they've been victimized by it and they understand how important it is. And their transgression was in the name of law.
Okay, Judge, I don't know if you can hear us, but your audio went out. Um, can you just hold that thought, Wilson? I'm gonna go to El Hotep until the judge comes back, and I just want to make a notation, guys. Sometimes it's okay to write down your talking points or your notes. I do that all the time, so that way you won't forget what you were saying.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish up, Judge. You were saying something.
Okay. what happens is the Republican Party at one time was guilty of stepping on the Bill of Rights, but their interest was to preserve public peace, dignity, and order. In other words, in the name of law and order. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, is trampling on the Bill of Rights, and their idea is to forcibly impose an ideology, which is totally different. So we have to be aware of those kinds of things. There's an interesting thing about the Democratic Party that they have been very mum about. At one point in American history, prior to 1850 or so, they were the only American political party that was a formal one. They were a new party relative to the history of the country because initially we had the Tories and the Whigs, the same English political parties that had been brought over here. They just disappeared. The Democratic Party came into existence the first part of the 19th century to expand and protect slavery. The Republicans were chartered in 1851, and one of the specific things that they listed in their charter was to end and restrict slavery. So people ought to understand that consequence. Now, the Democratic Party, I think, was engaged in something that would have brought them back into having exclusive power. At some point over the last 4 years, they thought they would be able to maintain the presidency and pick up the House and the Senate. It didn't work. And what happened is part of this whole open border thing was to let in people, and it depending upon who you're looking at or what you're reading, that's between 30 and 60 million people, which is bigger than most countries in the world added to the American population. And the president, who was anticipated to be Kamala Hyena Harris, was going to be able to, under American law, make a declaration that these people who came in subsequent to January 2020 were political refugees and entitled to asylum. She could post date it. Now, the interesting thing about American law is that if you are granted asylum, you don't have to go through all of those classes that people who apply for citizenship have to go through. You are automatically a citizen in 5 years and you don't have to go through any test. So from 2020, that would mean that this year, all of that crowd that has crashed the border would be citizens of the United States entitled to vote in the upcoming midterm elections next year. And that would have allowed the Democratic Party to get an ironclad stranglehold on the American political scene. It didn't work out like they thought, and they're squawking. And then one of the things that we need to look at, and I say it over again, is Title 8, Section 1324, that deals with aiding, abetting, advising, giving comfort, counsel, attempting to help evade arrest, apprehension or arrest, detention, deportation, giving um, invites to or transportation to is what we call sanctuary cities. That is a felony under American law, and it's been that way for a long time. And the spectacle of governors, mayors, sheriffs, chiefs of police advocating felonious breaking of American federal law is astonishing, because I guess they slipped and they too at the top suffer from the ignorance that so many citizens do about the law and how this system works, that they just overlook that they're dealing with felonious behavior.
Right, right. If I may, Judge, because considering that you built upon all of that, which I absolutely appreciate, maybe it's not so radical of me to actually, assert that, democracy as we know it today should be outlawed. I know that sounds crazy, but what do you think?
Well, if you have a democracy, everybody gets to vote on everything. And there was a referendum in Los Angeles when I went back there when I was doing the show. And that referendum was to have the citizens vote on any contract. And I can just see the chaos by putting a 28-page contract with the local utility company about the supply and the charge rates for running the stop signs, the traffic control devices, and the street lights, and putting that on for the citizenry who had no understanding of what contracts are about generally, what the economics were, and allowing them to vote on whether or not the contract is to be adopted. That's what you reserve for your executive branch. But that would have been democratic.
Right.
All right. So, oh, can we move on to the next one on L?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm good. I don't want to take too much time.
El Hotep, and then Michael. So I swing back to Michael. And guys, if you want to request, do so now because we're shutting it down at midnight, and that's in about 40 minutes. Um,
Yeah,
El,
I just wanted to find out what the brother was going to finish talking about Dan Bangino. Hopefully, I could get him back on course what he was talking about because that's very interesting what he was saying as far as Dan Bangino's religion and now with these Epstein files. I don't want to talk about that, but I did want to ask the judge a question. I don't know if you all even talked about it because I came on late. Judge, did you get a chance to see Charleston White's comments on the Carmelo Anthony case? And if so, your thoughts on it?
he doesn't know who Charleston White
I
is.
don't know who that
Oh,
is.
damn.
What
Oh,
specifically
okay.
are we
Okay.
talking about?
Damn.
He is just some
Damn.
ghetto,
Okay.
dirty looking, ignorant black man who just say anything just to go viral. But
He's kind of
secretly
like
now, it's
a
a lot of
social
people that like
media
what he
influencer
says.
troll, kind of. He's kind of. I didn't know if you was aware of him or not. Dang. Okay. Never mind. Let me. Damn. Never mind then, because you don't even know who he is. So never mind. Damn. Okay. Okay. But you have to.
He probably seen him and just
Yeah.
didn't
You know
know.
what? Yeah. You probably have seen him. He has one eye.
But why do
These
we care
black
about
guys with the.
Charleston? Like, what is so
I
fascinating
don't
about
know who this
Charleston
is.
White that we need to analyze and discuss his comments? Like,
Well, because I think it was kind of interesting some of the stuff that he was saying. I think him and the judge had the same position, and he
well,
actually
so here's
backtracked
the
what
thing
he
though,
said.
but here's the thing. He's going to have a position that's going to get him views and attention. So, honestly, no offense. I don't talk about Charleston White because he's irrelevant. He really is. And I know he did try to say about a story about the time he was on a phone with the judge and he cussed the judge out, but he got to respect him because the judge didn't show no emotions. And the judge, you said that you never even spoke to him. That's not true. But people make up stories about someone who was well known so that their name could stay somewhat relevant. So I don't really fuck with Charleston White or whatever he has to say because he's just ignorant. 1 minute he's helping our community. The next minute he's saying F the community. So he's a joke. And that's the problem that I have with Black America. Stop looking to people like him thinking that there's some type of leader or philosopher or talented 10 when they're just a nigga.
As
Yeah, no,
interesting
I
as
didn't
it
know you
is,
guys had issues and stuff like that. I just wanted to find out his opinion because they did have the same take on the matter.
I've
I guess he
never
had a
heard.
conversation with his father, and I guess since then he's changed his opinion. This was all new to me too. I just saw the clip today, so I figured maybe he had seen it. Maybe he might have
And so
known who
yeah,
he
I heard.
was.
Well, I saw the clip. The judge ain't see the clip. I saw the
I
clip.
have
All
no
right.
idea who he is.
Yeah, and I can't listen. I saw the clip like maybe first 30 seconds and I saw the title and the first thing came to my head, why is Carmelo Anthony father talking to a Charleston White? What? And your son is charged with first degree murder. Your ass need to be talking to attorneys and that's it. You're talking to a ignorant social media person. So again, why is that Negro whose son is have capital murder charges on his ass, talking to a low down, ignorant, ghetto ass content creator? What the hell? So and now I'm starting to wonder, because that's what the first thing came to my head. Second thing is it true that the money that people raise for them is gone? So the whole thing is just crazy. Why is that? I'm not talking to no content creator. I'm not talking to the media if my child is in that situation or any type of serious situation. So what is really going on? And I'm saying, you know what? I guarantee you, El Hotep, that he was lying. Does that make sense? That the father would talk to him? Why him?
Nah, you're right. I mean that did, yeah. I mean, because that crossed my mind too. But I did also think of considering his background. The stuff that the shit he allegedly did. So I don't know. I don't know if he just trolling, just trying to get some extra clicks and some extra views. Um, it was just interesting that he all of a sudden backtracked, and now he's saying that he's sorry, that he felt the way he felt before, and he think that he's gonna get off scot free. So I just wanted to get the judge's opinion on the legal point of view, because some of the
What
stuff
makes
that
him
he
think
was
that he's
saying.
going to get off scotch free when he killed someone?
I, can I ask you a question? Did you watch the whole clip, or
I'm
did you
not.
just watch
I
maybe
don't.
like
Okay,
15
so here's.
seconds?
I'm not watching his clips because he's a liar and he's irrelevant. So again, I will be watching his clips for quote unquote entertainment purposes, but that's the same reason why I'm not going to watch it, because he's talking about a serious situation, not just with Carmelo Anthony, but this is an epidemic that's going across high schools and junior high schools across this nation. So the people think this is something unique, but it's not. It's very normal. However, this is a serious situation to have an ignorant somebody get on social media and lie about talking to the father just for views and say, well, I have a different stance. Well, bitch, I never gave a fuck about your first stance. So why do we give people such as him all this attention and relevancy when they're irrelevant? I don't understand that. He doesn't know nothing about the law. He doesn't. Nobody knows. Nobody didn't see the video. Nobody knows exactly. Nobody haven't even seen the evidence, because the evidence has not even been presented. The trial has not even started. They didn't even. I don't even think they didn't even select the trial date. So he's saying, "Oh, he may be innocent." He don't know shit.
He said that if you go to the school, that you could watch the video,
Yeah,
and
he
and
did
that
say
there
that
was
too.
fentanyl in
But he
Austin
didn't
meth
see the
class.
video. Charleston White didn't even see the video. This is the same guy that lied
That
and said that he cussed the judge out on the phone. And he is a lie. I don't think he spoke to that man father. I don't think Carmelo Anthony father is that retarded to have a
I haven't
conversation
spoken,
with him.
to make it clear, I've never spoken to this person.
So what if there's any
okay?
truth behind there being any fentanyl in Austin meth class system?
That's just stuff
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask the
that's just
judge,
theater. Let me put it this
because
way. The law is pretty clear on this. When you have two young men are of approximately the same age, even if there is a difference in physical stature, unless somebody has a disability, you have one hell of a burden trying to explain how you attempt to justify escalating non lethal physical force to lethal force. It's escalation beyond what is allowed by the law. And the other thing is a pragmatic thing. I don't care what the law said in terms of what ultimate justification may come into this. To take a knife to a track meet, even if it was a pen knife or just a pocket knife, Swiss Army knife, you have a problem with your manhood if you feel that you have to stab somebody in the chest because you may get your behind beat. You either do one of several things. You stand there and duke it out, you run, or you wait until later and come back when there's not several. And then the other thing is that the bad part is this guy that is on trial is captain of the football team, which is not an all black football team. So he's representing some white folk too. So it takes it out of the racist realm. The other point is if you are the captain of the football team, you start. That means that you're either on defense or offense. So at some point, every play that your team has the ball or the other team has the ball, you have at least 11 people approximately the same size or bigger than the two twins. So that means when you block, tackle, receive, get tackled, or get blocked, what winds up happening is you're in a combat that requires a helmet, shoulder pads, rib pads, hip pads, thigh pads in order to fight on the field using non lethal combat. So that means you're supposed to be used to dealing with somebody that size. So to come up and say there are two people that you might have to confront who are no bigger than somebody you have to deal with every single play of a football game that you are in does not have any convincing quality to it. It's a punk play. And I grew up in
But
South Central LA, and I knew that the person that would stab or shoot you was the scaredest person out there. And there's nothing manly about escalating that kind of fight. If it's a fist fight and you want to escalate it to a knife fight, you have some serious problems with your manhood unless you have a war situation. And it wasn't a war situation.
right, and I'm not a
So, so
defender of Charleston White at all. I do think he's an antagonist, but some of that information he was saying in that clip, it seemed to be like inside information. The names he was giving up, it's just to the point to where we're going to get the truth to this sooner or later. And if what he's saying has any type of truth to it, this will really be
Well, let me
it
break
change
it
a lot
down
of
to this
stories right
way.
now.
They've charged the defendant with first degree murder. They have said it was premeditated and intentional, or deliberate wanton, or wanton and premeditated. Intention can arise quickly, and stabbing somebody in the chest using lethal force is a great escalation and requires intention to do. That's not accidental. The other thing that comes up in here is in order to justify self defense, the following criteria have to be met. The language may change, but essentially it's the same. Anywhere in the country, if you are assaulted, you may use such force as is reasonably necessary to defend yourself. If, under the circumstances, you form a belief that you are about to be subject to death or serious or grave, etc., or serious bodily injury, then you may use deadly force to resist the assault. You may take the other person's life, but you have to have a reasonably articulated reason for developing the opinion that your life is about to be taken or you are about to suffer a crippling or disabling or extremely serious injury.
But just the fact of making the statement that the Austin Metcalf had fentanyl in his system
That
at the
has
time of his
absolutely
death,
nothing, goddamn it, to do because you can be high as you want to be. But the point is, if you are the defendant,
I thought it had something to
voluntary,
do with George Floyd's death,
no,
respectfully.
it doesn't. It's that's got nothing to do with it.
All right,
If
so one.
you are so, hold on, let me finish this. This is the law. Voluntary intoxication is not a defense to wrongful acts. All right. The fact that somebody else may have been drunk, high, intoxicated, under the influence of something only has anything to do with it if it is likely that somebody on the jury or that whole jury put in your situation would say, hey, if we'd been there, we would have thought this guy was going to kill us or try to kill us. So the question is, under the circumstances, was the defendant possessed of a reasonable belief that the person he stabbed in the chest, causing his death, going to kill him?
All right. I need to go to
or
Michael
trying to.
Empress. I need to go to Michael Empress and lifestyle, and then we'll close it out. Um, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, now the topic's getting juicy. You know, I'm a ski skirt away from this one. But I would like to go back to we're talking about the Bill of Rights and separation from church and state. I find it kind of funny, like how the United States has a Bill of Rights, right? God given rights. Now, why would God only give us 10 rights? You know, and if that's the whole premise of our country, right? Why is there a separation from that?
In the First Amendment of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of advocacy. In other words, you don't want to allow a tyranny to develop. You want the citizenry to freely be able to express their thoughts, to freely digest what's being put in front of them in terms of good governance, or economy, to have a free press that is encouraged to and allowed to fully investigate situations, to speak freely, to understand that the best way forward is not to suppress uh, onerous or objectionable speech, but to counter it with better information and data for analysis by the people, to allow people free assembly, etc. The Second Amendment is caught up with the fact that when the Constitution was passed in 1789, police had not yet been invented. So it was expected that every able bodied male between 15 and 60 was to be proficient with arms, armed, and ready to protect the public peace, dignity, and order. Also, going along with that, there was a thing about if the citizenry is armed, it serves as a check and balance to both the state governments and the federal governments. Both governments, state and federal, were to be broken down into three arms: legislative, executive, and judicial, with each having co equal powers. So no one would be able to assert overweening authority and set up a tyranny. The Third Amendment, nobody's ever had a case because it simply deals with quartering troops in private residences. That was just something that was big because of what happened with the Revolutionary War and the Brits being stuffed into colonial houses. But we've never had any problem with that one. So the Third Amendment is essentially irrelevant. Fourth Amendment has got to do with search and seizure. We gamble when we have a Super Bowl and we bet on the outcome of who's going to be ahead at halftime or in the third quarter, and we put money down. We play friendly games of poker in damn near every state in the United States. That's illegal, including in Nevada, but we don't have to worry about it because police have no justification without probable cause of coming in your home to see what you're doing, or a search warrant delivered upon probable cause. What is probable cause? That is the actual observation or the cause that expressed to an independent person who is not expert in the subject would lead that person, a magistrate or a judge, to believe reasonably that somebody was going to breach the public peace, dignity, and order. There's a lot of stuff that you can do behind closed doors that nobody knows anything about because it being secluded, it does not breach the public peace, dignity, and order. The Fifth Amendment deals with the most important right that the individual citizen has. He or she cannot be compelled to be a witness against themselves. You have a right to be free from self incrimination in a criminal matter. We look at that as the Miranda rights, which shows what happens when due process applies. Justice is blind and there's a presumption of innocence. And we should not look at who the person is, but what the person has proved to have done using due process of law, which is also under that particular amendment. That means that you can't bring somebody in and interrogate or torture them so that they become the only witness against themselves. That is the Fifth Amendment. We look at the Fifth Amendment and we express it as Miranda rights. Miranda was a lousy, nasty individual in his own home. He's wound up killing him. But because he got his due process of law, and it went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, where it was firmly articulated almost 60 years ago. Well, 60 years ago plus. It became a series of rights embraced under the Fifth Amendment known as the Miranda rights. The Sixth Amendment has to do with the application of law. It says no matter heard upon appeal during the course of trial before a jury upon the common law should be heard upon appeal except upon application of the common law. That resulted in the very first case the U.S. Supreme Court heard in 1792. What was the conclusion? All law in the United States is the common law until it is superseded by statutory legislative action. What is the common law? Quote, that body of judge-made law based on tradition, precedent, and the evolving conditions of society. Unquote. So technically, all law in the United States is judge-made law until it is superseded by legislative action. But we hear it all the time today, the evils of judge-made law. It was a presumption that anybody that rose to the level of a judge was going to be a wise man, learned and experienced in the law and wise in the ways of the world. That's not always the case now. So then we get on into the rest of them, finally due process of law, and we get with equal protection of the law, and we get into what's not articulated as reserved to the states. And then the 14th Amendment applies due process of law to the states. So that is what we have in terms of a constitutional basis. And out of the world's laws, it's probably the absolute best. It's like the rules that the NBA has when it comes to basketball. It's not what the rules are, it's who's playing them that counts in terms of the victories. So the rules are neutral. They're not bad. Yes, when they were propounded, it was a bunch of racists that came up with them, but that's not the case. And we can go back to the metaphor of basketball. The NBA was one of the most racist institutions in America in 1945. The Lakers hired Don Barksdale out of UCLA to play for them. And now, when you think basketball, you think black. So, what used to be the most racist institution in America, with the same rule book practically, which is analogous to the Constitution, is now the rule book that's played by a game that is dominated by black players who used to be specifically and pointedly excluded from it up until 1946 when the Lakers hired Don Barksdale.
All right.
So
Um,
things evolved.
I need to go to Empress, Lifestyle, and Nikki.
Thank you, Judge, for all that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
Empress.
Greetings. Much Detroit love to you, Dana, Peter, and my favorite, Judge Joe. We love you, support you 100%. I really enjoy you speaking about the law. Brings me back to my stepdad, who is gone many years, who also practiced law in Michigan. I would like to ask a question to Judge Joe. Seeing now on a lot of advertisement, social media, Instagram, where you'll see officers when they pull men over, black men especially, every now and then black women, and they run your name, then want to say, I now want to search your vehicle because
I'm sorry.
you
I
look
can't hear no
suspicious.
one. Peter, can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
All right. It's me. Give me a sec.
Can you hear me now?
I could hear you, Empress.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So as I was trying to learn on this statute from a federal aspect, When you hear officers say they want to
Just go ahead and
search your
talk. I'll
vehicle,
figure it out on my end. Just go ahead.
when you hear officers say they want to search your vehicle, and then when you say you don't give them permission, then they begin to threaten you on a racial level and say, if you don't have anything to hide, why should you not allow us to search your vehicle? What federal statute allows for that?
The
Because
federal
I'm
statute.
noticing that in,
Let me
go
explain
ahead.
this. I know where you're going. The deal is as a citizen, you ought to know your rights and you ought to know what your Constitution says and what the general law is about. What your answer is that no, I don't grant you permission. If you want to search my car, go get a warrant. And if they have probable cause, they can get one. But they're 9 times out of 10 bluffing you. And they say, I do not give you permission. If they say, on the wall, give me the keys, say, I'm not going to voluntarily give you the keys. If you want to take them from me, that's fine. If you put a gun in my face or tell me I'm going to get jacked up if I don't, I surrender them involuntarily. But you don't have to consent to it. That's just drama. See, under the Supreme Court as it was 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, they got away with being able to bluff. The police did. They could lie to you. They didn't have to be truthful to you. They don't even have to advise you of the Miranda rights that you have unless you ask for them. But most cops want to be held accountable because detectives are interesting. A lot of detectives drink whiskey with defense lawyers. When they rode in the squad car, they couldn't stand defense lawyers, but when they found out what it was to be on the other side and the subject of accusations, all of a sudden defense work became important. So they will tell you if they're very experienced detectives. Sometimes I had a bad hair day. Hell, I might have done something wrong. And if I know there's a vigorous defense lawyer who will assert the Constitution, then I feel better and I can sleep at night saying if I make a mistake, it won't be to the harm of somebody who is innocent. So they understand that. So our system is based on the fact that we had like it ideally to work in an atmosphere where it was almost mechanical, where it was inside the bowels of a computer, but it's not because they're people, and people
Mhm.
are manifested in what is called the reasonable man or woman, I guess. And what the reasonable man or woman is what a collective of 12 people on a jury says it is. Now, my experience over the last little bit more than a half century of being involved with this, out of every 5 juries, 3 of them are pretty good. One of them you'd think took the short bus to school every day because something's wrong with them. And one out of the 5 is just they've lost their minds. They have completely blown it. So there's what it is. Now, I will give you an example of how you can tell whether you've got a wise jury. It involves a thing called jury nullification, which is technically against the law, but sometimes required of. It shows you the ridiculousness of some laws, and it shows you what happens sometimes when you do bring 12 reasonable people in. I tried a number of these as a defense lawyer 45 years ago. The crime in Tennessee was unnatural sex acts. And what that meant was is if a man and a woman, husband and wife, decided that they were going to have oral sex, that was a felony in the state of Tennessee that carried a sentence between 3 and 15 years in the state penitentiary. So I had several of them that arose under the weird situations where an estranged spouse going through a divorce used the key to get back in the house, caught the ex-spouse or estranged spouse and the new girlfriend going down on each other. So it was funny when you got a jury and one of the jurors, when you avoid arms, said, Jesus Christ, Lawyer Brian, you mean to tell me that what my wife and I do all the time, we could get 3 to 15 years in the state penitentiary? And the judge would come back with something. If you're talking about oral sex, yes, sir, you could. Jesus Christ. So what wound up happening is the jury suddenly got engaged in a real life situation. You got the preposterous position of the state legislature that had something that crazy that they still allowed to exist. And you got jury nullification because 12 people said, we're not going to be part of that. And you got the human element involved in it. So if you want to contrast that, let's go to France. Everybody likes to go to France. People eat upon going to Paris in the spring, right? Right. Well, under French law, if you are arrested, you are presumed guilty until you prove yourself innocent. They do not have juries because they say a wise man is as reliable as a jury of 12 under the Anglo American scheme. And they rely on l'ultime conviction, the intimate or gut reaction of a wise man being as valid as the reaction of a 12-man jury. Now, we say 12 men or women on a jury constitute a reasonable man or woman, the collective. But every now and then the prosecution says, politically, our DA is elected. He wants this plush job, so he wants to be reelected. He's got to try this case. But because it's so effed up, the prosecution and the defense consent to it being tried by a judge, so we don't have to worry about the ups and downs of going in front of a jury. So all kinds of things go to accommodate the fact that we are not inside of, we are not AI, we are not computers. And you have to deal with the fact that I don't care what it boils down to, you have to deal with the realities of human nature. Now,
All right.
that's,
I have
yeah,
lifestyle and I have Nikki because I'm trying to get to the last two speakers so we could close out. So go ahead, lifestyle.
Greetings to everybody and to everybody in the audience. Hi, Dana. How are you? And Peter and the Honorable
Love.
Judge Joe Brown. I don't have a lot to say. I just wanted to.
All right, I don't hear you. Do anybody else hear him?
No, he cut out.
All right, you.
Yeah, he cut
I
out.
don't hear him.
Yeah, he was dropping it down and coming back up, so it must be a connection issue. You probably got to drop back down, lifestyle. So I'm gonna go to Nikki, and then I'll swing back to you if you drop down and come back up. Go ahead, Nikki.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to see you guys. I haven't caught your room in a while, so it's nice to see you. I
Good evening.
well, I have a question. I have a question regarding the whole Epstein thing, and my question would be this: when it comes to first of all, everybody's like, we want the files, we want the list. Like, I'm not really sure what they expect from that. So I guess my question would be, first of all, like all of that evidence was with the SDNY, which we know is very corrupt. When Ghislaine was charged, she was charged with trafficking minors to Epstein only. She wasn't charged with trafficking minors to anyone else. Um, and of course, when Epstein died, the charges against him were dropped. But what happens to the evidence? Like, there was a ton of evidence. It's kind of questionable as to where it was. Like, some say it was in the SDNY and then the FBI took it, or maybe the CIA, or we're not really sure. So, with that evidence kind of being not really known by the public, obviously some of it's sealed, some of it can't be uh, some of it can't be shown because of the nature of the material. But let's say, for example, if that evidence does exist, and they do see that there's potentially another crime that they could be, whether internationally, federally, or for a state, if they see that evidence and they can, maybe work on some sort of prosecution, wouldn't I mean, like, they're not going to disperse that to the public. They would keep that close, and they wouldn't talk about it. They may even deflect, in my opinion. And you know there's a lot. This case is very, very wild because you know, Ghislaine Maxwell had something called the Terramar Project, which had to do with open waters. Richard Branson was involved. She had somebody from Cargometrics who was a professional. He did like maritime data. So basically, he was on the board of Terramar. So that was set up as an organization, hypothetically, in my opinion, that looks like it could have been a high-tech trafficking operation because she had a submarine license. He had Cargometrics. He was the CEO with the data. And to me, like, if I know this, you would think that the other people involved that have all the information know this. So is there a potential that they're holding information back as they do maybe like a bigger sort of picture uh, investigation?
Big picture. It's not so much an investigation as to what has been discovered. Let's suppose that you're in Washington, D.C., and Metro DC police say, "Oh, we got a case against this guy," and they go bust this guy, and NSA comes up and says, don't do this. This guy is vital to national intelligence, and there's something that we can't tell you that he's involved in. You need to back off." You ever heard of the Federal Witness Protection Program?
Yes.
Okay, you have criminals who have committed crimes, but because of the knowledge and information that they know, they get a free pass. They get secreted away in hidden places and get a new identity so they can provide evidence to go after something or somebody that is deemed more dangerous. Now, there is some support for the contention that Epstein was working with Israeli intelligence, which means that also involved Egypt, that also involved Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and the United States. Because humans are very sexual creatures and the sex drive is so strong, the international and national intelligence entities have relied upon that for the longest to trap people into situations such that they are compromised and become amenable to supplying information that is necessary by the particular intelligence agency involved, or will make them subject to being turned. So, to avoid personal embarrassment, they will provide information against the other side. I know what they said, but there is a strong likelihood that when somebody got to looking in it, there was this light bulb that went on, and somebody says, "Oh, hell, what did we just stumble into? We can't let this out." This will cause an international incident. And see, what often happens is when somebody gets a free pass because they're so helpful to the intelligence community, sometimes they get a little bit too greedy, grasping, or their perversions come out and they start doing something that's way off code. Now, that is probably the case. Now, the statement was released. What was it? There's absolutely no evidence that he killed him, that he was murdered. Okay, there wasn't. Because if he was in fact murdered, it was done by the highest category of professional, and they didn't leave any evidence. So there's nothing on the scene that you're going to be able to come up with you could produce in a court of law. So even if this guy was outright murdered, there's not going to be any palpable evidence that's available for anybody to use to prosecute. And then again, as somebody ably pointed out earlier, I think our co-host here, there's a possibility that Epstein is still alive and well because he got put in a deep level witness protection program and they sent him to Israel, where he is enjoying an interesting life in retirement under a subsumed name. So it might lead to something somewhere, or it might be one of those things that's, hey, we got to cut this off. That was also an element of what happened with the Diddy situation. But in Diddy's situation, and I said this 3 hours ago, it wasn't so much something for the national intelligence effort. it was Diddy maintaining a status quo by having something to blackmail some of his colleagues in the entertainment industry. And also, since some politicians, being what they are, tend to like to get their freaks on, perhaps some very compromising information on certain people in the national eye. I can think of Hunter Biden being caught up in this. I can think of Kamala Harris and her association with certain other people over the last 20 years being caught up in this. I can think of some other people that some wanted to protect because they wanted in place to come up with furthering their cabal to take over the political scene in the country for the next few decades. So there are all of these interests, and I look at $50 million not being adequate to secure somebody's appearance for the balance of the proceeds, which is all that can be considered when you start talking about reasonable bond that's guaranteed under the Bill of Rights. And in a situation where, as I predicted months ago, that what they were going to be able to hang their hat on was what I call a corrupt series of charges under what's known as the Mann Act, and what under the sentencing guidelines Diddy is likely to get, even if the judge deviates way up, which he's not likely to be able to justify. What's going to wind up happening is $1 million is certainly enough to assure his reappearance for the completion of these proceedings. And bond, unlike what they say popularly, is strictly to ensure somebody's continued appearance until the matter is disposed of, not to punish somebody. The fact that you jumped off in this Diddy thing into proof of other crimes was poisonous. The fact that we are forgetting that there is an international intelligence community, hell going on in the Middle East, with some very crucial things going on between the U.S., Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt, and other places in the Middle East. There's no telling what would come to light, and people just once they got to look into it, what is it? Oh shit, we can't let this come out. Damn, and
All
they've
right.
got to sit on it.
Um, anything else you wanted to add, Nikki, before I go to the before I go back to lifestyle?
No, I appreciate that answer because that's kind of what I was thinking too, because I feel like this isn't the end of it. Also, I was just curious, real quick, as a follow-up to the Diddy stuff, is it possible that he could have he could have made a deal to maybe rat out like higher ups or somebody um in negotiating his sentencing and all that?
I think that's going to happen later in a possible commutation of sentence. Meanwhile, his main victim probably got extorted by the Biden Harris Justice Department into being their witness because from what I heard, she's complicit. She's an accessory, she's an accomplice, she's a co actor in everything that they tried to get against Diddy. She was involved in. And what you saw with Diddy was the horrendous pimp hoe game being run. And I'm surprised the defense didn't get into it, though they didn't really need it. It worked out was with a very deep pocketed expense account. They didn't get into producing clinical psychologists who would talk about the mechanisms of sadomasochism that were apparent in this case. So I think it
And
was a politically motivated prosecution. They brought in Homeland Security so they could keep him incommunicado in jail and locked up so he couldn't embarrass anybody during the November 24 election cycle, which that side lost. So now we have a different perspective. But I think there's some horrendous things going on. And what you were looking at is a classic example of what has been newly termed lawfare, in which the Bill of Rights was designed to prevent. Now, I'll pass with that.
All right. Lifestyle.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is it as soon as he started talking, we don't hear him no more? Is it just me?
No, I don't hear him either.
Same
I'm
thing.
not
All
hearing it.
right. I don't think it's gonna happen tonight,
Yeah,
lifestyle.
he, he's pranking us.
It,
Oh, he is? Okay.
He's,
That was silly.
but Judge,
Go
but
ahead.
Judge, I have a dream. In the words of MLK, everybody talks about the problems, but nobody suggests any solutions. And I'm just wondering if you think this would work. Taking the money out of politics, government. If our founding fathers would have been so wise as to say that the elections would have to go through our congressmen. Say we couldn't considering the fact that only a quarter of the population actually elects the president, we don't have 100% democracy. Keeping that in mind, if we had a Congress that elected our president through our congressmen, which would force our districts to make sure they had the proper congressmen, do you think that would eliminate the corruption?
Well, sir, what you would have is the government of the United Kingdom. That's called a parliamentary government. That's exactly how they work.
Really?
But
I wasn't aware of that. So they
but
don't
we
Yeah.
would
elect the prime
definitely have
minister.
more
So,
with what you pose, we would definitely have more corruption because I don't trust the
Yeah, they
people
definitely have a
appointed.
lot of corruption. They
well,
definitely have a
that's
lot of
called a
corruption.
parliamentary government, where, just like you said, members of parliament are elected. They select one of their members to be prime minister, the prime minister with the contrivance of the senior members of the majority or the coalition that constitutes the majority in parliament. They pick the cabinet. The cabinet goes overseas to king. They get the portfolio from the king and they govern England.
And all the parliament members are from separate
And
districts,
they no,
elected
yeah,
by.
not only are they from separate districts, in the English parliamentary system, they don't even have to live in the district.
All right.
Yeah, I'm saying in the American one, they would have to live there. They would have to
Yeah.
know them, be from there.
But you
Yeah,
see, there's one thing you have to understand. People say America is a corporation. It's not. When America was founded with the Constitution in 1789, corporations had not been invented. Somewhat later, much later, people say we want the equivalent of the limited liability companies that exist in England. They are
right.
created by crown edicts. So the state started creating fictional people known as corporations. They modeled the corporation on the US government, and that explains a lot. With the corporation, you have what? Stockholders. With the US, you have citizens, right? The
Right,
stockholders elect a board of directors, right? The
right,
citizens elect a board of electors. The stockholders who have elected the board of directors find that their board of directors select the chief executive officer. The electoral college, elected by the stockholders slash citizens, select the chief executive officer known as the president of the United States. The president of the United States, as the chief executive officer, nominates all of his executive functionaries like ministers of the cabinet, and then we get the people who become vice presidents, etc., of the corporation, executive vice presidents, etc., etc. You get the other structures that are set up under a corporate situation, which only reflect what's done by the U.S. government. So that's what you get. This is not a democracy. Certain
right.
people are elected to certain positions, to which the House of Representatives, recently the U.S. Senate, though previously the senators were not elected, they were selected by either the governor of the state or the chief legislative bodies in combo by the state. And the president was selected by the electoral college slash board of directors. So this is what we have as a governmental process, and it works. It has to be ironed out. There are new things that develop that nobody anticipated. So
What if
All
the
right,
that
people?
what
let
we
me
What?
have.
wait. Hold on for a second, Carlos. I have to get to Jelani, because
Okay.
there's no speaker. Go ahead, Jelani. And lifestyle, I'm not bringing you back up, hon. Jelani, go on one.
Hello, unmute.
Oh, can you hear
Jelani,
me? Can you hear me?
yes, yeah.
Okay. So what phase are we at right now? I'm sorry.
You have
You
a
got
Excuse
three
me.
question.
phase.
It's freestyle, open mic. What do you want to talk about?
Well, let me say this. I personally think that I think Donald Trump, in my opinion, killed this presidency with this way things have been going. I mean, a lot of his base, the people that vote for him, including the black people, did not vote for him to do a lot of things they're doing right now. And I know that he's been bought out and everything, but you know, clearly, I just don't see him being able to make up for this in the next 2.5 years. I just think it's
Make up.
impossible.
What are you talking about? He needs to make up for.
Well, he ran on being the no war president, and clearly he's not at this point. So,
Would you say that?
well, let's see. Um, well, he the United States is clearly in on this war against Iran. He attacked Yemen. He attacked these people before, actually, from his first presidency, really. So,
So wait. In the scheme of things, this is the cold-blooded answer cold-blooded remark suggested by political science. So what if he did? It's called he did a preemptive strike. That's a classical move over the last several thousand years in the way things work on the world scene. It's also called gunboats of diplomacy. So, what exactly did he do wrong? And what exactly did he do that is not supported by the overwhelming majority of the people who already supported him?
well, I really don't think they supported a lot of these. I mean, I know you're saying that there's historical precedent for this and there's political precedent for this, but preemptive strike is, in my opinion, assuming that they're going to hit you anyway, so we're going to hit
All
them
right,
before they hit
Jelani,
us.
your phone sound like pure shit right now. It's
I'm
cracking too
sorry.
much.
All right, hold on a second. But to me,
In other
okay,
words, in other words, it's done all the time. That's how the NOM started.
yeah, that's what I'll say. At least in the case of the United States, that seems to be the history
That's
for the
how
most
the
part.
Spanish American War started in 1898. The U.S. acted preemptively because they thought, or they were lied to and told, like we did preemptively in 2003 when we attacked Iraq, supposedly
Okay,
because of weapons of mass destruction that turned out not to exist because George W. Bush was trying to set up his family enterprise, Halliburton, which was founded
hmm
by his uncle Herbie, to take over the oil industry in Iraq. That was a preemptive situation right there. So we have
right,
within everybody's memory Iraq, preemptive. We have the Spanish American War, preempted because it turned out the Maine was not sabotaged by Cuban or Spanish saboteurs. It blew up because of a design problem and faulty coal that they had stored next to the ammunition, which spontaneously combusted. Boom.
right.
So we have a bunch of these in our own history.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, let me ask you a question. Since I won't go
Wait,
into what
wait,
my political
are
opinion
you
on
in a
this, or
blue?
Yeah, I can't, Jelani. I can't let you continue because your phone is cracking up and it's going to mess up the algorithm on YouTube and just the
If you're
whole
if
audio.
you're on a Bluetooth, just get rid of it.
Yeah, get off the Bluetooth. Are you on a Bluetooth?
hold on a
I bet he's on a Bluetooth. There were several. I mean, talking about preemptive strikes. I mean, just under Obama, there was like Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, like, it's not unheard of. So that's kind of a.
I
The
think the
Obama
answer to the judge's
administration is
question,
responsible for 2,364 bombing strikes without a declaration of war, delivered as preemptive.
I think the answer to the judge's original question was that Trump has demonstrated that he is not America first, and that's what he campaigned on. He's Israel first. He's owned.
Well,
Well,
aren't they
see,
all
hold on,
Israel
hold
first?
on, hold on. Let me put this out. Political science analysis, and having been, well, one of my brothers was involved in that as somebody that was caught deep up in Saudi intelligence. Um, there's more to it than meets the eye. And there is a thing that involved Anwar Sadat, Menachem Begin. Anwar Sadat was president of Egypt. Menachem Begin was prime minister of Israel. And in 1976, Jimmy Carter got them together to sign a peace treaty. There is Saudi Arabia. Up until recently, the chief of Saudi counterintelligence was born in the United States, California to be specific, American citizen who went to school, kindergarten through law school, not law school, grad school, and public schools in California. His children were born in America. His wife was born in America. His father was born in America. He could run for president. He was in charge of Saudi intelligence, counterintelligence. They had an American who was a major general in the Saudi army. That was my brother, who commanded a tank battalion in an airborne regiment charged with guarding OPEC headquarters and carrying out special missions in collaboration with French intelligence, British MI6, that's James Bond's folk, Mossad, CIA, and NSA. So all of these people are caught up in this joint thing to stay on top of a mess. One of our problems with what goes on in the Middle East has got to do with Anglo-Persian Oil Company, founded in, well, excuse me, the Parliament of England acquired a 51% share of in 1922. We know it now is BP, British Petroleum. So there is a big thing caught up with that. There is Halliburton, which was incorporated by George Herbert Walker, uncle to George Herbert Walker Bush, President of the United States, great uncle to George Herbert Walker, President of the United States, great great uncle to Barack Obama, aka Barry Soetoro. So we have three United States presidents and a vice president, Dick Cheney, who was also a nephew of George Herbert Walker. All of these people caught up with Halliburton. Obama's adoptive daddy, Lolo Soetoro, ran an independent oil company out of Indonesia where he was an oil tycoon, formerly vice president of American Standard Oil. So you have a very interesting cabal that had a great deal to do with trying to engineer a situation where Halliburton could get the exploitation rights to the oil in Iran. I mean, not Iran, in Iraq. Iraq, through Hussein, gave a contract for oil exploitation to France and Russia. Halliburton had been seeking to get it. But in 2007, after the Iraqi army had been beaten and Hussein deposed, Halliburton got the contract to exploit Iraqi oil. And the last I checked, which has been quite some time ago, Halliburton was netting $2.7 million netting every 6 hours in Iraq because of the acquisitions that the war that George Walker Bush started on the basis of a false report of weapons of mass destruction had gained for his family company, of which he is a beneficiary, of which Barack Obama is a beneficiary, of which Dick Cheney's heirs are a beneficiary, of which Sarah Palin, who was McCain's running mate, governor of Alaska, is a beneficiary. because she's also a cousin of the whole bunch. Now, see, that's how stuff works, and we don't pay attention to it.
All right. I think that's good for tonight. I'm tired. Peter fell asleep.
Thank you, Dana. I see you doing overtime.
Yeah. I try to do three. It's 3 hours, 16 minutes. So we start
Hey,
at 9. We start at
if you throw,
9. Can you hear me?
yeah, I hear you.
Oh, so I just want people to know we start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays and 3 hours. And because I think that's good enough. So, and it's usually open mic. Sometimes it's centered around the main topic, but it's open mic. So, thank you to everybody that came up to speak, everybody listening, everybody in the chat on YouTube and listening on YouTube. And everyone have a great week. Peter, you want to say anything before the judge closes out?
No, great space as always. Stimulating conversation, and hope to see everybody back for the next one.
All right, Judge.
Well, I enjoyed tonight because we didn't have a plethora of people who were perpetual victims and complaining about what they couldn't do. Keep digging. That's what we have to do as citizens. It's our obligation to keep pushing and keep inquiring. Now, Dana, I appreciate you have to go to bed, but I never did get much sleep throughout my adult life, and I'm too close to being dead to worry about it. I'll get all the rest I need adult soon enough. So damn it, I'm up.
Well, well, you could be up. Yeah, because
But I understand. I get it. So
I need to
it's
get
been good
my
talking to
8 to 9
everybody.
hours.
I,
If
I
somebody start a
enjoy
space and invite you, you should hop on.
I enjoy these dialogues, and I don't know what it is. It's hard for me to get on. You've been to my house, and you know how I have
Yeah,
bad
it is.
is
Yes,
about
it
it.
is hard. Yeah, and then other people have. I just went downstairs and I was having connection issues, so it was little what you call that, dark, not dark spots, but dead
Dead
spot.
zones.
Yeah, dead zone. So, but yeah, so again, appreciate everybody, and everybody have a wonderful week. Peter, are we doing a space Thursday?
Yeah, let's do Thursday night.
We'll see, because definitely on
Judge, why don't
Sundays.
you come back Thursday?
I will see if I can come back Thursday. I might try to get myself a date somewhere in here because I ain't that dead yet.
That means he ain't coming back Thursday.
I might
If,
come back
if he's
Thursday.
scheduled for a day, he gonna give you that day, and that's it.
Judge, open a space. Have you hosted a space before? Open one up. Like an after space.
I have not. I did this stuff for 15 years, so I'm happy to help people out. And come on, but I'm retired. Been retired as a state judge for 25 years. That's a quarter of a century.
He's not doing any manual labor anymore.
Yeah, I'm not.
I love it.
And I ain't gonna do it.
Your voice is appreciated. That you have such wisdom, and I wanted to thank you because your insight is always very succinct and neutral, and I hope that everybody takes it and just thinks about what you say. Um,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to get a compliment. We get all of these
Well,
folks
first
who
of
are
all, just for
posers.
the room to know, Nikki is his favorite pupil. Did I say that right? Pupil, student. Yeah. So she's his favorite student, and because she always be dropping the, what is it, the research and the legal citations in in the chat. So
Dana,
yeah,
show him how to open a space so he don't get lonely over there.
honey, I'm not showing him that tonight because I'm about to go to bed
Look,
No,
now.
look,
I
I
don't
don't
mean right
want
now.
to.
I know you're going to sleep. I mean later.
I don't want to know. Somebody else do it. And look, I appreciate everybody because I got my DNA done and I found out something. You know what that is?
What's
I'm a
that?
damn mutt.
Me too. But you know what stays the
And
same, Judge? Your bloodline. Did you find
yeah,
out your bloodline?
yeah. And it ain't a bad one, but I'm a mutt. So the bottom line is I identify with being black, but I ain't down in anybody. So I found that some people who helped me out in life have been white, red, brown, yellow, all kinds of stuff. And I have friends who everything. I identify with being black because my hair made a nice afro at one time long ago before I got slick headed.
All right. And with that, good night, everybody.
Good night, Dana. Nice hearing you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Now